reviewing phase 2 exterior uses only tonight. So may I have a motion, please, to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, John. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. Okay. Tim, are you here? I thought I saw you sign on. There you are.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Reaching out to Andy. He's having a little trouble getting on there, so hopefully he'll be on in just a moment.
Okay, would you like us to wait?
Yeah, I mean, obviously like him, the owner here for this, if he can, they say he's logging on right now. I just resent him the link. He was
Great,
telling me
okay.
the number was no good, so I don't know if there was a change between the first and second invite.
No, I don't think so. And for those of you who are interested, we're just, this is a recurring meeting now. So the meeting invitation for Zoom should never change unless there's a reason to do so. So you can always go on the city website and it will be posted there. And we're hoping it will always be the same. So board, I sent you information from Tim at the end of last week, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I hope everyone had a chance to review it.
Looks like I just saw his
Oh,
name.
there he is.
Okay. Now here, I'll show my screen here.
Thanks, Tim. Welcome, Andy.
Share my screen. There we go. All right. All right, can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, so I assume go through the whole thing?
No, I think we approved your phase 1, which is for all interior and building, actual building envelopes. So we're really just talking about the exterior tonight.
Okay, very good. All right, so we're looking to refinish the backyard of the restaurant here and have an event space in the back with, we're gonna have an accessible parking spot with our ADA entry here, an additional.
Tim, could you make that site plan full screen on your screen so that we see
Oh,
a lot of
sorry.
pictures and we see a lot of other stuff there?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I have a large screen, so that might be what's creating the problem.
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Is that good?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so we're looking to create an event area in the back here to service the restaurant, which is this area of the building. Again, ADA parking here for an ADA accessible entry, additional parking space, and then a shed for some storage of some of the tables and such for the event space and for cardboard, and then our dumpster and garbage area back here in the back area. So what I did is I'm gonna skip this one for 1 second. I'll come back to that in a second. So I made an enlarged plan of the event space to give it more a site layout plan to better show and answer some of the questions that we were discussing last week or last month, excuse me. So again, this is our event area. Is this okay rotated? I can rotate it. Just gonna be a little smaller.
Looks fine to me. I think you can go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so we're gonna have the event area in the back here. We're proposing a pea stone finish over the existing finishes that are in that space. On 2 sides of the event area, we're proposing a 15-foot high sound fence, which would go along the side and the back of the space here. On the back wall, we're gonna put up a movie screen that will be put up for events when necessary and taken down at other times. For the lighting of the space, we're looking at using some overhead string lights to give the area some gentle light. for the movie or event space that's going on. The sound system, we're looking at using small speakers that would be local to the people in there in order to keep the sound level down during it. So this is the rendering that we had for the building. On this rendering, I wanted to show this because it has the fence. So on the event side here, you would see the slatted fence. In between the slats of the fence, you'll see the sound barrier, which is an acoustical barrier material. We're proposing to put it in white in there, so you'll see this white pleated material between the slats from the event side. The adjacent property side is a texture 111 panel, painted to the same color as the theme of the space. The shed, just showing it as a general piece of information, and then we're going to have a similar fence on between the event space and the parking area, and then also around the dumpsters, being a board and batten fence, which will not have the sound material, since it's facing the alley and a brick building, so we don't have anything on there. In the fence, along with the sound curtain here, which is here to bring the sound, keep the sound down, we're proposing to put some LED strip lighting in the behind the slats here, just to give a little more indirect lighting to the space. And then going through the pictures here, we have some planters in the area, something along this line, some round planters that would be placed adjacent to the back door, and then in the corner, kind of an accent. The pea stone finish we're looking at is some type of just a stone to keep the area, so it will take the foot traffic, that we don't end up with an issue with finishes over time. And then the lighting over the space here, again, are some string lights that will be hung over the space. So here's one in a sample picture of what we're talking about, in order to give it an indirect light, similar to what you see at a lot of wedding events. And then speakers, we're just looking at some small speakers to be local to the users of the space during the event. Then just looking at the string lights, this is a sample product that we're looking at to represent what we'd be looking at for the string lights in here. They're able to be dimmed and are variable color over the space. Again, this is the sound absorption material in order to deaden the sound between the backyard and adjacent properties. It absorbs the sound. This is used typically for construction sites and rooftop equipment, air handlers and stuff like that, in order to keep from letting objectionable sounds off the site. And then this is just a sample of the LED lights that we're proposing for the space.
That's in the slat wall?
What's that?
That goes in the slats?
It goes behind the slats, so that it
Okay.
will be, you won't see it. It'll be shining onto the acoustic batting material for indirect light into the backyard. So one of the things we were talking about was what the current backyard looks like. And so these are some pictures of the backyard. This is where the previous fence was located. You can see the 15-foot high posts in here, and a telephone pole for the lighting, which I think was removed on this one, but remains on the opposite. So This is the back line of the facility, and this is the tennis courts on the side here. There's an existing light that was servicing the backyard previously.
Tim, can I ask you a quick question?
Yep.
Just to confirm, so that I think in the previous picture you're on, that 15-foot post there, that is the height of the fence that you're proposing. So we should imagine
Correct.
filling out that space. Okay.
Correct.
And just so that you know, I did confirm with Craig that a 15-foot fence is perfectly appropriate in this district.
Okay. So we're just some shots around the backyard of the facility here, just to show what the existing conditions are and what we're looking to do. The telephone poles will go away, and this will be replaced with a new fence. Oops, sorry. There's the back of again, that's telephone pole with the tennis court next to us. This is the back of the residential portion. This lower portion is our ADA bathrooms and some dining. The rest of the dining will be replacing this section to the right. Again, just looking at the back here. So this is the line. This is essentially the line of the sound fence that will be installed. And I just wanted to show, where's the, let's see the picture I'm looking for here. All right, I thought, oh, I saw what it was. Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. This picture here also, I just wanted to show, this is where the sound fence will come up and abut the back of the property of the existing building.
Great, thank you, Tim, very much. Board, before I turn this over to the public, does anyone have any more questions? All right, members of the public, this is your chance. Does anyone have anything?
I do have a question.
Laura?
I just wanted, could you just confirm again what time, any outdoor activities are going to end during the week?
Andy, you want to take that?
See ya.
Is Andy on, or is he?
Also, Tim, why don't you stop your screen sharing so we can see the public if they pipe in?
Oh, okay, sorry, no problem.
No problem.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. Yes, we can, Andy. Thank you.
So I would say 10 o'clock seems like an appropriate time for a cutoff. I know just from experience in Hudson and other places that have outdoor spaces that abut residential people, that seems to be a time that has worked. Back bar entities like that, and please don't think that we're building a bar, because it really isn't a bar per se. But yes, 10 o'clock seems like a reasonable time period, and also given that we are going to extremities to, in whatever way we can, to reduce the impact on any neighbors.
Thank you.
Sure.
Members of the public, anybody have any questions for Andy or Tim? Hearing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Moved.
Was that you, Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Okay. This is a type 2, well, it's a site plan, so we don't have to do seeker on this one. but I do need a motion to approve phase 2 exterior uses for this property.
Before we do that, I had one quick question. Is the occupancy of the rear space the same? I mean, are you continuing the occupancy of the interior out to the garden, or does that have its own additional, head count, body count?
No, I mean, it's a continuation of the restaurant. The idea is that it would, it's even designed, if you look at the back building, it has two thermally insulated garage doors that'll open up to the backyard. There's also, in one of the pictures that you just saw, we already installed a set in the house portion. We put in a set of atrium doors. That
You don't envision any additional users back there that are not accounted for in the use of the restaurant itself?
the restaurant itself, I mean, currently, I think the seating, what's shown in those plans, I think is 58 people, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really anticipate, what I want to do is have Craig. I mean, Craig is usually the ultimate say on these things, because he comes in and he says, he looks at it from the perspective of a fire marshal, which he was for so many years. And he basically dictates what you can or can't do. So I'm not looking to push the extremities beyond what's safe and legal. So.
And that is, yes, Ward, we do know that Craig sets those occupancies
and he usually cuts them back lower than most people, you can walk into, of course, I'm talking pre-COVID, but if you walk into many of the facilities on Warren Street, restaurants and whatnot, and you look at the occupancy level and on a busy night, and then you look at how many people are sitting there, they don't always comply.
Right.
And just because you're supposed to maintain 3 feet, 3 feet of space in all of the walkways. And that's very difficult to do in many cases, particularly in a lot of the older buildings. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to let Craig come look at it, and I'm sure he probably wants to give final say on that after the building's constructed. And he's going to say, okay, I can approve you for this level of occupancy. And my guess is he's probably going to come in around 60 people. I don't think he's going to come in any more than that. So that is what we're looking to establish. We will abide by whatever the code restrictions are.
And those back doors close also at 10?
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, in an effort to keep people from going outside and making noise, and yes, you would make it so, okay, everybody's in at 10.
So I just wanted to
see us staying open super late. I mean, there might be, like say maybe a private party or something at times where they might choose to go later, but certainly in that case, the backyard would be shut off at 10 o'clock, and they would remain within the building itself.
So I would, before we go to a vote, I'd just like to note that the closing time for the back is 10 o'clock, as well as the doors being closed is the closing of the doors is 10 o'clock.
well, I think what we've done in the past, Laura, is we've said no amplified music outdoors after 10, and the doors to the building have to close at 10. But I think people can still sit out there after 10. Can't they? I mean, I think that's true at Kitty's, and I think that's true at Back Bar, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think you can still be outside, but there can be no music, and the doors have to be closed.
Music, or in this case, also film, the sound of film.
No amplified anything, no amplified sound after 10, and the doors to the building close at 10. But I would imagine if there were some guests that wanted to linger and have,
Yeah, just that this property is just so close to,
10 is tough. I mean, if you think about the summer, when it gets dark at 8 or 8:30 and a movie runs 2.5 hours, I'm not going to want to have my sound cut off on the movie because it's after 10 o'clock. and I don't really know if I want to start the movie before it starts. Right? I mean, I would. I
That
don't
that's a definitely good point. I'm gonna say that the movie thing has become a bit of a focal point of this meeting. It is something we'd like to be able to do, but it is not. It is by no means
The
the
driver.
premise of
Right.
of what we're doing. It's just
Right.
simply like, wow, wouldn't it be cool to be able to do this on a nice summer night on a weekend? Once in a while. It's not like, okay, we're going to do this all the time. I'm not a movie theater per se.
Yeah, sure. I think that's clear, but I also think that I would hate for us to put down a stipulation that then prohibits an intended use, which I think we have no problem with.
Well, aren't there homes really literally, I know that the sound barrier is going up, but literally abutting that property? I mean,
Not so much. I mean,
that's different than back bar.
on one side you have the tennis court building on the just opposite the alley. Okay. The western border of the property abuts another large backyard. It does not abut somebody's house. There are my next door neighbor on 7th actually abuts the building, our residential building, 43 North 7th. And then his house is next to that. And there is a yard in between. And of course, this sound fence would act to help mitigate any intrusion that would come into him. But there are properties, I'm going to say, they do have backyards of their own. And do I think that they abut, that they're like right on top? I would say not. I mean, certainly like when I went to the back bar and I sat in the backyard, I looked around and there is no sound fencing. There is nothing mitigating whatever noise they're creating. And there's windows, there's buildings that in some cases are even taller than the ones around us with residential dwellings. And, they're impacted by that situation. And I've seen also, I've been there where they shut down. They said, okay, 10 o'clock, turn the music off. And yes, you were right. They let them continue to sit outside and talk quietly, but they become very conscious at that hour of their impact on the neighborhood. But they've not gone to any of the extremities that we are proposing or here by putting the fence up. I mean, the fence was definitely, these were my observations from having gone to other places and seen, and thought to myself, my God, there's an apartment right up there. Those people must, they must hear all this stuff. It must be difficult for them to live in that situation. So that's
and we
how
really appreciate that you're doing that. I mean, in theory, backboard does have a sound barrier up, but I mean, I think we know that it's up, but it's not what you're doing, and it's really appreciated what you're doing. I just wanted to understand better what time any amplified music or amplified movie sound would be ending, and we're saying that's 10. The applicant's saying 10.
That's what I'm proposing.
Okay.
A very good point was raised just about, yes, what happens if it's a summer night and it doesn't really get dark till 9 o'clock at night and you start a 2-hour movie. So yes, that is a thought that I was like, yeah, you know what, that's a consideration, but I don't know that would, I don't want to find myself in a position where I'm disturbing the neighbors. And 10 o'clock to me, if I put myself in my neighbor's shoes, I say to myself, okay, this seems like a reasonable time.
Good. So I think 10 o'clock's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, I think for the purpose of movies too, I mean, sunset by July is like 8:15. You might be looking more at like late summer and fall movies, but it should be doable later in the season.
The other thing too is with a 15-foot fence, that's going to create a darker area to have the movie in. You have the theater or the tennis place on the other side. So that's going to block a lot of the light that comes from the west, you know, so,
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know, that would-
Okay, so
I'm
board,
fine with
in an
10.
effort to sort of move this along, I don't want to shut discussion down, but I think we all agree that we can condition this, that the doors close at 10 to the back garden and that there's no amplified music after 10.
Are we closing the doors or are we just shutting off the amplified music? Because you
It's
had
up to you.
raised a point of, well, I mean, you did raise a point that if there's people sitting there lingering, and as long as the music's shut off and there's no amplified anything,
Oh, they can still be out there, Andy. I'm not saying lock the doors
right?
to the restaurant. I'm just saying close the doors to the exterior so that any interior clinking and clanking of dishes and stuff won't be heard by the neighbors.
Oh,
But people
okay.
can still sit out in the garden
All
until
right.
you close.
Yes, understood.
So not locking, just closing.
Okay.
Okay. So board, are we satisfied with those two conditions?
Yes.
Yep.
Sure. I'm good.
Thank you. So we've closed the public hearing. Do I have a motion to approve phase 2 exterior uses of 4143 North 7th Street?
I'll move.
Thank you,
I'll
Clark.
second.
Thank you, John. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well done. All right, Andy, I am looking for a resolution that I wrote that I'm not finding. Ugh. Oh, here it is. And I'll go through it quickly, board. Whereas the applicant Ingenuity Design has applied to the Hudson Planning Board for site plan approval for the property located at 4143 North 7th Street, comprising tax block lot 110.53-2-20. And whereas the HPB considered the application at its meetings on November 10th and December 8th, 2020. And whereas duly noticed public hearing was held on December 8th, 2020, during which all who wished to speak were heard. And whereas the project type is a type 2 action pursuant to seeker, and whereas the project requires HPB approval pursuant to 325-35 of the city code, and whereas the HPB has reviewed the criteria for site plan approval set forth in 325-35. Now therefore it be it resolved that the HPB grants site plan approval as presented on the site plan dated on the site plan and finds that the project satisfies the site plan approval criteria set forth in 325-35H of the zoning code, subject to the following conditions. The doors to the exterior will be closed at 10 p.m. and there will be no amplified music after 10 p.m. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Yes, that was quite a resolution, Betsy. And yes, I move that we pass that.
Betsy, can I just, you said no amplified music, but do we want to say no amplified sound?
No
So that includes the,
amplified sound. No
Yes.
amplified sound.
Thank you, Steve. That's good.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so I have a motion by Larry. Do I have a second?
Second.
John, all in favor, please.
Aye.
Right, okay. Andy and Tim, thank you very, very much. I will get you and I will get stamped site plans to Craig's office for you that you can pick up at your leisure.
Very good, thank you.
And if you all have any questions, obviously, please feel free to call.
Will do, thank you.
Congratulations and good luck with your project, Andy.
Luck.
I appreciate it.
Good
Thank
luck.
you so much.
Yeah,
I'll see you
Can't
all.
wait to go there.
Thank you.
thanks.
Have a good night.
Thank you. very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along board, we are reopening our public hearing for 119 Columbia Street. Is this right? No, excuse me. Continuation of our public hearing for 259 Union Street. Conditional use permit application from Wild Hudson to house a business office for community-oriented business. We are reviewing phase 2 exterior uses only tonight. Hillary, I need a motion to open the public hearing, please.
I move that we open the public hearing.
Thank
I'll
you
second.
there. Laura, second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Hillary, welcome back. Thank you very much for the information that you supplied.
Course.
if you would walk through your phase 2 exterior uses with the board and the public, but primarily the public, that would be great.
Perfect. I'll start with the site plan. So I'm going to share my screen. Hey, just let me know when you can see. Everybody can see?
Just,
now we can. Yeah.
just, okay.
It's a delayed reaction there. So I have a couple plans, just so that everybody needs a refresher, and then also for the public who is new. This is kind of proposed usage for the parking lot space that is next to the old ore bar, which will be the future Wilds. The Galvin Foundation wanted me to just reiterate that the parking lot will not be used for parking cars, and that is actually in my lease with them. So we are proposing these other usages for the outside. This is a site plan of an empty parking lot. You can see South 3rd Street and Partition Street and Union Street. This is the parking lot area, and you can see that in relationship to the building and the front fenced area in front of the garage. The main use that we would like to propose of the parking lot area is a market that would vary in maybe one weekend day a month up to both weekend days during the summer months. We're only talking about warm days, and I'll get into the details in my second presentation. But this is a sample layout of market tents and a few temporary picnic tables. I'd just like to point out that every occurrence of an event is just for the event. Nothing is permanent and would be taken, erected and taken down for every single event that we do. In the front, you can see these gray areas that are kind of on South 3rd Street. Those would be temporary flower boxes that would act as a barrier between the street and the event that would be happening in the parking lot. So that is our sample market layout.
Flower beds fixed, or are they mobile? Are they like the shared streets guys, on Warren? What are they?
Exactly, they'll be mobile.
Okay.
So they're not going to be there, all the time. We'd probably leave those there during the summer months, just because it probably looks better than an empty parking lot anyway, but everything would be mobile. This would be a sample of a chat. In my previous business, I've done a lot of kind of educational chats and workshops. Sometimes they're nice to do them outside. And so here's just a proposed seating chart of what a sample chat would look like. These little turquoise squares are chairs, and then we just have a couple cafe tables. This last site plan would be a sample of a potential yoga class outside, and a potential layout of where those mats would be, again, having some cafe tables just for some atmosphere. So those are just the...
Are you going to have planters also on the Union Street side?
There is actually an existing barrier fence that is there along with these trees. Yeah, it's about I'd say 2 feet tall, 2.5 feet tall. And there's the sidewalk.
It's like a metal guardrail, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to switch to just some of the proposed usage. This is a presentation that I believe is posted to the Hudson City website. These are just, again, just talking through that these are samples of usage of the parking lot space. Again, the main reason that we'd want to use the parking lot space would be for the market, but we did want to include some other potential options like the chats and the workout classes / yoga classes. The outdoor proposed lot uses for the wild market. I put a minimum and maximum use. The minimum possible usage would be April through October, potentially just one Saturday a month. That would be 7 occurrences a year. Maximum would be every weekend of the summer months from April to October. That would be 30 occurrences. Start setting up at 8 a.m. Strike would finish by 7 p.m. during those days. Noise, we don't anticipate noise to be over 65 decibels, which on the high is normal conversation. We will have just background music, nothing that is of loud nature. I have Behringer B102B speakers from my previous life that will be used and to amplify any music or background noise. And here is suggested occupancies, vendor counts. As you can see, there is 10 tents and a public max count on a minimum possible usage, 50 in that space and 60 on the max side. Obviously, with COVID continuing maybe into the early spring months, we would be observing any regulations that still exist for any public gatherings. These are some sample pictures. Obviously, everybody's familiar with market setup. So these are just kind of some inspiration photos.
Hillary, can I ask a quick question? You mentioned the Behringer 112D.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with those. Are those like large speakers? I'm assuming, is that going to be under the same decibel restriction as? Okay.
Yeah,
I guess I want to make sure, but I wasn't sure what we were supposed to take from that.
No, I mean, it's slightly larger than a Sonos speaker, but not anything like you would see at a concert.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The next proposed usage would be the wild chats. And again, this is a minimum maximum usage. When they would be happening, the event would probably take place after business hours. And these most likely would happen during weekdays, not necessarily weekends, since we would have the markets on the weekends. And that would be from 6 to 8 p.m. Sorry, I did not clarify that on there, not a.m. That would be very early for all of us. The noise, again, not exceeding 65 decibels, same speaker usage. And occupancy, we would do 5 panelists or speakers and seated chairs between 30 and 40. On the maximum usage, I put standing occupancy, so that would be up to 75 people listening. Again, same COVID regulations and restrictions in early springtime. And those events are RSVP'd. So those are going to be controlled and people will be checked in for attendance. Here's some sample visuals. These are actually pictures from events that I've thrown in the past for my other company, Brand Assembly. So this would be a similar aesthetic.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
It's great having all these numbers, and I really appreciate your additional detail, which is, I think, pretty much speaking for myself, exactly what we wanted, which is great. My question is, how do you expect to, I guess, regulate or control crowds based on your numbers? I mean, will you be out there? Will there be security? Will there, what's the method by which you expect to meet your numbers?
Of course. So in the markets, that will obviously be somewhat visual in the beginning, especially with COVID restrictions. We would be monitoring those in the early spring. So the markets would be somewhat visual. And then the chats, as mentioned, those are RSVP events. So we would have a check-in point for people to enter and get checked into those events.
So if and I hope this happens for you, if in the market days, if you have more than 50 people, I think you had said 50 people, do you have a place for the overflow to kind of wait? Do you have that in mind? Some place for them to wait while some other people clear out so they can wait to come in?
Yes, we have the fenced-in space outside the front of the garage, and then, of course, we'd probably, I mean, this is in a very good instance, we would have probably people lining up on the sidewalk and wrapping around the front of the building.
And will you have occupancy posted then? And obviously, that might be a temporary board. that would indicate how many people, the approval okays.
Yes, of course. If that is, something that you would like me to put and impose, I would definitely 100% do that.
Sounds good.
And then the last proposed usage is what we would call wild works, which would be any kind of classes, whether that's workout or art-based workshops. And again, we are doing kind of same warmer weather months. These are probably this would be the least amount of occurrences that we would have. And these would range from, the morning to early evening, depending on whether that's a workout class or an art workshop. Same noise restrictions that I had put for the other events. And these are very private. So again, just by RSVP only, and max, 20 to 25 participants for those classes. And here are just some inspiration images so you get an idea of participation. Again, space for art classes and easels, yoga mats, and some workouts. Here are some sample inspiration for the planter and mobile barricades that we had proposed at the front on 3rd Street. And that is the presentation.
Hillary, thank you very, very much. We
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate the work you put into that.
Of course.
Public, do you have any comments about Wild's proposal? This is your opportunity to speak up if you have any kudos or concerns. Yes, I'm sorry, I can't, Charles.
I am a Hudson resident and independent marketing consultant and an artist. And I just want, and also in full disclosure, I'm personal friends with the project proposers. However, my support for this project supersedes my friendship. I think this is a fantastic project for the city, the opportunity for the space, given the way people are working today. I think it's extremely positive for the city of Hudson. And just on a personal note, I've been following Hillary and Luke's presentation and thought about this project for several months, many months. And I think they have really taken all the sensitivities and concerns of the city into account. And they're really committed to the city of Hudson. So just on a personal level, I think it's a terrific, professional level, I think it's a fantastic project. On a personal level, I think they're very responsible and sensitive to the city's needs. And so I just appreciate the opportunity to express my support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Jane Trombley, you had a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. I'm Jane Trombley. I am a First Ward resident and kind of a round the corner neighbor from this location on 3rd Street. So I want to, like the earlier speaker, express my really strong support for this. The idea of building community in Hudson, making it a more livable, workable place where we can all thrive, place where we can gather is kind of, I think, at the core of what Shared Streets was all about, and the development that's going along the waterfront and other initiatives. And I think this is just critical to our future. We're in kind of dark days right now, but if we ever needed a lift and an eye to what could be down the road, this is it. And so thank you, Hillary, for putting together some visuals that not only suggest warm weather is coming, but also the opportunity to gather on in a marketplace or in a educational setting or in an exercise setting is extremely helpful. So that notwithstanding, I really, really endorse the project and I urge the board to approve it.
Thank you, Jane. Mark?
Hi, Mark Scrivo, 4th Ward. Yeah, I just want to speak to the character integrity of the project. I grew up with Lucas in Kansas City, 30 years ago, and have known him a very long time. And I think him and Hillary are doing fantastic and important work in the community. And I just think it's important. So I'm just here as a character reference for the project, and as an advocate for the community building. And I would urge approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark?
Any other comments? I do not see any looking about.
I have a question if
Yes.
it's done.
Yes, Laura?
Comment. First of all, I'm from Kansas City.
You are?
Talking about Missouri. Are we talking about Missouri?
We don't discriminate between the state lines.
Well, I guess I'm older than you. No, we didn't either, really. Go Chiefs, I guess. So, no, I do like the Chiefs. I dated one. I just want to say that the outdoor space is going to, from what I'm seeing, basically be used until 8 o'clock, which I think that's wonderful. And also that means that you don't need any outdoor lighting for these events. Is that true? Or are you going to have outdoor lighting?
That is true. We are not adding any additional lighting for these events in the parking area.
I have a follow-up question too, which is all those events and the layouts you guys did were really great. What happens when those events aren't happening? I mean, you're planning on serving coffee, et cetera, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. So is there any sort of semi-permanent arrangement for client customer use when you're not having events?
Not in the parking lot area, no.
Okay. So it'll just be empty, unused.
Correct, yep.
Thank you.
And what will you do during bad weather?
During bad weather, that will go inside, unfortunately. Yeah, the market might not go inside, but the talks and, limited work, of the wild works would go inside.
So the vendors would probably put up their own small tents or small canopies?
We will be providing the tents actually to
Okay.
vendors to make it a uniformed aesthetic.
But during the winter months, could the market go indoors if you wanted it to?
Not in that same capacity as far as volume is concerned. But if anybody has a large space that they would like to donate inside, we would be happy to fill it.
You might have one across the street.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hillary and Lucas, very much. I really appreciate it. You did a good job on that. And I would like a motion, please, to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Board, are we putting any conditions on? Well, actually, I should say, do we have a motion to approve this project?
So we have a resolution prepared.
Yeah.
Shaheem's going to pull it up on the screen right now so everyone can go through it. You don't need to, again, the beginning is just the recitations about the facts, indicating it's been broken out into 2 phases. You've already approved phase 1. It's a type 2 action under seeker because you're reusing an existing commercial space. And it doesn't exceed any other thresholds for a type 1 action. And then if you scroll down a little more, please. It puts in, there's a waiver in here for you to waive the standards of the zoning law, the site plan requirements. And then you find that the conditions for the special use permit have been met. You guys have talked through the operations in the backyard, in the parking lot. So, I think you're satisfied with those. And then you grant site plan approval. And right now the only condition is payment and fees.
Last part again, Victoria, the only what?
The only condition as of this moment is payment of fees.
I think escrow's been established.
It has. That's just a catch-all to make sure that if there's ever an overage, they have to, that's a standard condition.
So in other words, if suddenly you had to spend 30 hours on this project, but we only had 10 hours worth of escrow, okay, I understand.
Correct. I don't anticipate it being an issue at all on this project, but
It is not. I'm sure it is not.
Victoria, I had a question about it's an unconventional site plan, and which I'm fine with. I'm not going to make a scene or a situation around that unconventional site plan, but we are waiving the standards. And I think, I appreciate your phrase in there that, given the minimal nature of the intervention, that's why we're waiving it. I just want to make sure that we're not establishing an unfortunate precedent for, we've asked the applicant to prepare a proper site plan. It's been a struggle. I'm fine with this. I have no interest in prohibiting the project from moving forward, but I do worry slightly about setting a precedent for the future if another applicant likewise has difficulties, right? I mean, we made Back Bar come back to us. We made Untitled Star come back to us. They actually provided what we asked for. This applicant isn't really doing that. And again, I'm fine with that. I just don't want to establish, I'd like us to be rigorous about treating all of our applicants fairly and in the same manner. Can you just speak to that for me just a bit?
well, your comment is noted. I mean, that's exactly why I put that explanation into the waiver language, because there is no physical change to the property.
Right.
I think if there were a physical change, you would want to look at drainage, you would want to look at landscaping, you would want to look at other issues. So I think the board would push more for a full site plan set in that case.
Can I just interrupt too and say that the code actually has a different set of parameters for permits for conditional uses than it does for site plan development approval. And the parameters are different within them. So while everybody keeps talking about a site plan, this isn't quite a site plan.
Well, Crystal, it's both. They need site plan and conditional use permit approval. So it's both. So I guess if another applicant who is similarly situated came forward and said, well, you granted Wild Hudson a waiver, why aren't you going to grant me one? You'd have to consider why you wouldn't grant them one. And if it happens repeatedly, you run the risk of treating applicants differently. But here, I don't think it's an issue.
Right. Especially since we do have uses spelled out, which I understand from the correspondence that we're going to identify those uses as, they're going to be initialed by the board, by our chair, right?
Yes.
So that establishes those are the uses, and that should, and we also have a zoning code, right? That, if there's crowds or nuisances involved, we have, there's ways of addressing this.
Right. I'm recommending that the chair initial every page of the final submission so that later, if there's ever an issue, everyone can go back and realize, this was the final plan set that we approved, because it's not altogether like a traditional plan set would be.
Got it.
I guess that would be my question is what's the guarantee that, where the applicant says they're going to close at 7 and where the applicant says they're going to close at 8, that's actually going to happen? Because that would be my concern is where this is different than say Back Bar is that the applicant's programming outdoors is ending at a time, that is good. I mean, it's not going to be bothersome to most neighbors. And I'm just wondering, is that a guarantee? Do we have?
Well, it's the code enforcement thing. We're approving what Hillary's presented very specifically. Victoria's written a very specific resolution, and I'm going to sign off on every page of their plans. And so when they have wild chats and their closing time might be slightly different than if they're doing a yoga class, and it becomes a problem, Craig's going to know what he has to do about that, because we will have all signed.
To make sure that we're signing off on the times that they're stating, which I think are good.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
Okay. So are we okay with the resolution as prepared?
I'm fine with it.
Okay with me.
All right, so may I have a motion? We have to approve the resolution, correct, Victoria?
Yes, motion to adopt the resolution.
I move that we
Make it-
adopt the resolution.
I'll second.
Larry, John, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Fantastic, congratulations, yay Wild. Thank you for sticking with us. We're very excited for you. Really, I'm looking forward to you getting all up and running. It's wonderful, and I appreciate you coming back to us with specifics. I think we all feel a lot better about exactly what it was we're approving now.
Great.
So I will stamp everything that I need and get a copy back to Craig for you and for Craig. So call in a few days. It'll take me a little, I've got a couple of really huge meetings this week. So if you bear with me until Friday, I'd appreciate it. But I'll get everything you need back to Craig. And we look forward to getting going.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, board, next on our agenda is a public hearing for 119 Columbia Street, a special use permit application from Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems, DBA Verizon Wireless, to install and operate wireless communications equipment on the roof of 119 Columbia Street, Providence Hall. May I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Teresa. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, Scott, I'll sort of give you first shot here if you'd like. I know that you haven't submitted.
Do we need to do all in favor? Is that-
Oh, all right, all in favor to open.
Aye.
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 You guys, you keep me so honest. My God. Any opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, first of all, actually, Scott, I'm sorry, before I turn it over to you, Victoria or Mike. Mike, are you with us? Mike Musso?
Yes.
Okay, great. Would one or the other of you like to remind the public, since this is a public hearing, what the extent of the planning board's authority is? I think that helps sort of frame what we can be considering so that everybody's very clear.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I could certainly start with that.
Thank you, Mike.
Who's this?
I know we have a presentation tonight.
Mike, you're pretty broken up.
The applicant.
Mike, we can't hear you. We've got a really bad connection with you right now.
Actually, he's frozen now, Betsy.
So Victoria, could you sort of pick up?
Sure. Mike, I don't know if you could, maybe if you turn off your video, you might have more bandwidth, but you're reviewing an application for a new wireless telecommunications facility in accordance with the telecommunications chapter of your code. As the planning board, your job is to look at, site plan and land use impact. So you look at the layout, you can look at the aesthetics, you can make sure that it's engineered properly so that if it falls, it's not going to hurt someone. But the FCC is prohibiting you from looking at health impacts. A lot of people have submitted comments on, potential radiation and concerns about the effects of these wireless communications facilities. And although, it's interesting, it's just completely outside of this planning board's purview. This board is limited by law to only looking at land use impacts.
Right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, let's try again.
All right, we'll try again.
I have a question.
Yes.
This limitation is only extended to the board, not the public.
So that's true. The public can always say whatever they want to say. I mean, someone can come up and talk about a hamburger, but we're trying to create a record. And so if too much of the testimony, if the public is repeatedly raising these health concerns, the public's creating a record that if there's problems with the project later on, the applicant may come back and say this board didn't consider the proper standards. This board was instead persuaded by health impacts.
Right.
So, the public can raise it, but they have to be aware that it's really not relevant to the board, and to the extent that it persuades board members, it's improper.
Right. And yeah, just to add on to that, hello, everybody from the board and the public. Thanks for having me here again tonight. I've been consulting on behalf of municipalities. I don't work on behalf of the industry. So I've kind of been through this since the late 1990s, early 2000s with the evolution of technology and also what's been put forth by the FCC. I just want to start by saying the concerns from the public are absolutely valid. We always look at that information. I've looked at applications in the past, not this one, where there's absolutely no data that's submitted on radio frequency emissions. And I don't think that goes over very well as a first step by an applicant. And we always ask for it. And as we're asking for information here, there was information that was provided up front. I put together a completeness memo number 2 on December 2nd. And within that, I really am asking them to expand a little bit more. It's important that I think any approving board has the necessary due diligence, necessary information in the file. But for better or for worse, for planning boards, planning commissions like yourself, for the public, it's not a local issue. And the FCC has been very clear about this. It's been tried and tested by case law across the country over time, that if they do meet the standards for health, and that's incumbent upon me, by the way, to verify and to talk to in our future tech memo, then an application can't be denied because of that. So, that's something that's been provided as part of this application. We're asking for some more specific analyses for the neighborhood, for adjoining properties. And we'll look at that. And I'm very hopeful that the applicant is going to come to the table and provide that information. But I'll analyze that independently. But, that is true, I think, is just maybe a preface for tonight. And not to be snide with the public, because I'm a member of the public. I have a tower going up not far from where I live, actually, looking at my back porch. It's an issue if you're interested in changing it, not for your planning commission or your approval authority in the municipality where you live, but it's really a federal issue. And it's really something, I think, to petition politicians at a higher level, look for changing that. That, of course, has been done over the years. People, senators and congressmen and women have talked to FCC about that, have put information out, have put petitions forward, and the FCC has responded to those things. Starting way back in 1997, as part of the Telecommunications Act, there was a big health study which put forth the criteria that we use. It's called a maximum permissible exposure limit. And over the 2000s, and as recently as last fall, with the advent of 5G coming on board in years to follow, the FCC and their sister agencies, including the US EPA, had looked at those criteria. And the decision by the federal government is there's no changes needed to that. But again, I go back, it's still incumbent upon the applicants to demonstrate that. And I feel they're in the process of doing that. And HDR, where I work, will certainly look to verify that.
I had a question for both of you, if you could, because, I want the public to be encouraged in their commentary. And if we tell them that it's difficult for us to incorporate health concerns into our own deliberations, can you give us some examples of the kinds of things that the public, if they have concerns, can raise before the board?
Well, a few things that are raised with good measure and perhaps are relevant to this application. They're certainly relevant to, say, new cell towers going up in a neighborhood, a 150-foot structure that's damaging an entire ridge line or a scenic view or an overlook. Visual impacts, and that's something that the applicant is not complete on yet either, be it this is for a rooftop. But municipalities, just like other applications, even the ones you reviewed tonight, you're talking about aesthetics, you're talking about visual impacts, code compliance. The city of Hudson has, I think, a very well thought out wireless code, not updated in looking at some of the things that are coming down the pike from the federal government and with this on these technologies, but visuals, aesthetics, things like traffic normally don't rise to any kind of impact under SECRA. These sites are not occupied. They're monitored remotely. There's minimal maintenance based on construction. Safety and health other than RF emissions, Larry. Structural assessments. Is this built correctly? Is it safe? Is it designed correctly? Those are things that have to be looked at. And cultural resources. The proposed location is not in, but it's adjoining an historic district. So those are some of the common things that I think are really important to comment on. But the aspect of health, unfortunately, falls out of that category under SECRA and out of that category under the federal rules and regulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
It's a good question, Larry.
So Scott, back to you. I know that we haven't gotten the photos yet. I know that you did respond to Mike's first memo. I've circulated that to the board at this point, so it's on the record and it is also on the city website for everyone to review. And I know that there's pending a second completeness memo from Mike, as well as the photos to come. Do you have anything that we need to know about tonight from your point of view?
Well, thank you and good evening. I think what I wanted to do, if it's okay, is spend maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I've updated a PowerPoint, and I wasn't here back in November. I had a prior commitment. Allison was here, so I don't even know if she went through the PowerPoint with you all. But my thought was to kind of I heard a lot of comments from different people. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I want to just kind of slowly set the record straight about what we are doing and what we are not doing, if that's okay. And it's up to the board. If the board just wants to go for the public comments too, that's fine. We've submitted our first response to Mike's first comment letter. We haven't had the chance to it was just submitted. Mike gave us his letter, I think, last week or so.
Oh, no, I completely understand. We didn't expect you to have responded.
Okay, but we're in the process, and I should have something very shortly.
I don't think your colleague gave us a PowerPoint. I don't recall that. I wouldn't mind seeing that if we have. Betsy, do we have time for that? I mean,
we have 10 minutes for that. We should.
All right, I will run through it if you would like.
15. And Scott, is this PowerPoint something that you can send us also if we want to review it afterwards?
I can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And also don't forget, Laura, the meeting's being recorded. So it's always on our YouTube.
That's true, but it'd be nice to look at it.
I can. And okay, here we go.
Did I say Mike? I meant Scott. Did I call you Mike, Scott?
I think you said Scott.
Oh, good.
I think. Okay, so I guess I'll run through this. I'll try to keep it to 10 minutes.
Thank you.
But if you have other questions, we do have the Verizon wireless engineer here. We have a project manager. We have our engineer. So we have a host of folks that can speak to what we're going to be talking about tonight. So what we're doing, very simply, we're proposing to install 6 antennas and cabling and equipment on the roof of the existing building at 119 Columbia. And information we've provided and what I'll touch on later, why are we doing this? Because we have significant capacity issues and coverage issues in the city of Hudson. And it's resulting from very high network usage from residents in Hudson. And I just want to clarify that because I know some people have said, well, this is for Athens and Athens they rejected you, so you came here. We don't walk away from towns that reject us. Honestly, if we never went to Athens because this was always a Hudson site. And secondly, this is for 4G. I've heard millions of comments, but this application, I was having fun with animation, so bear with me. But this application has nothing to do with 5G. Our engineer has confirmed they don't have plans for 5G in the city of Hudson at this moment or in the near future. This is 4G only. I'm sure people are going to comment and say this is 5G. It can be converted to 5G. This is not 5G. And that's all I can say on it. And if it was 5G, we would tell you, because we're not afraid of 5G, but it is 4G. This goes to the beginning of the process. When Verizon Wireless determines it needs a new site, the engineer is going to create what they call a search area or a search ring. And that ring is denoted here by the red oval. And you can see that area is in the western part of the city. And it's that area that we have to be in for a new site in order for it to work with our network. If we were to put a site elsewhere, it wouldn't fit organically within the network. So that's why we're in this location. The engineer has determined when we need to be there. Once that happens, we went to your zoning law. We look at what the requirements are. One of the requirements is what you have in section 284.9, which is the siting priorities. You have a hierarchy of preferred sites. And the number one preferred site is a location on existing towers or structures that are city owned. And we did look at that. Bliss Towers is owned by the Hudson Housing Authority. So a very short history, I'm sure most of the board is aware of it. We spent the better part of 2018 and a good portion of 2019 negotiating with Bliss Towers. We finally came to terms. We came to a pre-application meeting before this board in the summer of 2019. At that meeting, we heard some rumors. I think it was also afterwards, maybe a former councilman. But anyway, we were told there's some controversy. Bliss Towers is proposed to be demolished. So we went back immediately to the owners and said, what's going on? We are expecting a 25-year lease with you folks. They said, no, we're not doing a 25-year lease. You get 3 years at most. And we said, we can't do that. There's no way to build the site for that amount of money and then take it down in 3 years. It makes zero sense at all. Bottom line is, they sent us a letter in which they revoked their offer to lease to us. They said, that's it, we're not leasing to you. You're done. So that was about a good year and a half, 2 years, kind of wasted. So we had to look literally across the street, because the building that we're proposing to go on, while it's not the 9-story building, I think it's 5 or 6, it's still tall enough to accommodate what we're looking to do. And that's the second highest priority in your code, on existing towers or structures that aren't necessarily city owned. And that's where 119 Columbia Street comes into play. Verizon's RF engineer confirmed it's an acceptable location. And because of that, it eliminates the need to do a new tower in your city, which I think everybody would agree is beneficial. And so the point that I want to make here, though, is that we are in full compliance with your code. This is the highest available priority that we can use. Had Bliss Towers been available and had the owners not backed out, we would have continued with the application for that, but that's not the case, unfortunately. Excuse me. This is just from our site plans. It shows you the area. I'm sure everybody's familiar with it. It shows you the buildings, surrounding properties, and the rooftop. And this is the same rooftop, just in a schematic. And the orange arrows are the locations of the proposed antennas. So there are 3 locations, 2 antennas at each location. The alpha and beta sectors, which are the ones in the lower part of the screen, they kind of have the penthouse has a backdrop, which is good, and you'll see in the photo sims. It helps these antennas blend into the overall structure. The gamma sector, which is more in a northern part of the building, that doesn't have a backdrop, but we've placed it as far from the edge as we could to still maintain the service that we need. The blue arrow is pointing to our equipment. All of this is non-penetrating. It's ballast mounted. It's all approved by a structural engineer. It's all been done before. And so it's all something that is widely used within the industry. I just want to point to a couple of excerpts from our engineer's analysis. And this goes to the justification for need. There are two reasons we need this that I mentioned earlier: capacity and coverage. This is data that is taken from our network. And what it does is it shows you capacity, and it shows you that we are really badly over capacity at this site. And it's maybe hard to see, but the red dashed line at the bottom, which I've put a big red arrow next to, that's where the 100% capacity threshold is. And the purple jaggedy lines, that's where the capacity is greatly exceeding our capacity threshold. Now you'll see in July, right around here of 2020, we did some work on the site, and it lowered our capacity. It helped with our capacity a great deal. We optimized that site, the Hudson Alpha site. We still, though, are above the capacity even with doing that. We can't do anything to increase our capacity to where it needs to be. This is just a second measure of capacity. Same thing. You have, in this case, the exhaustion capacity line is in the middle of the graph here. But again, going up. We did some optimization, came back down, but now it's trending up again to where it's hitting the capacity level. So again, that's our justification for capacity. This is what you might find a more traditional capacity justification, need justification. This shows you the service, which is the blue or purple color for our 700 megahertz system. That's just one of several frequencies we use. Any area that doesn't have color, that's inadequate, very poor service that needs to be covered. If we turn the site on, we get a lot of green area. Now, you're going to notice that this green area is really going far beyond our target area. That's because the 700 megahertz frequency is a low frequency and travels much further than some of our higher frequencies. And you're going to see that in the next slide. This is what we call the AWS frequency, 2100 megahertz, very high frequency. And you can see that we don't have a lot of 2100 megahertz frequency in this area. And we are trying to connect to what little we have in Hudson by turning this site on, which is what happens when you do that. This site is perfectly located to complement our network with this frequency. Again, these are only two of like 4 or 5 frequencies that we traditionally use, but we're focused on the 700 and 2100 megahertz at this time. These are just some excerpts from the photo sims. This is actually a picture from OnBliss Towers looking over at the site. As you can see, and this is with the sims up there, you don't see much. So I think someone was concerned, well, what's it going to look like from Bliss Towers? Not really that much different than what it is right now. You can see a few of the cable trays that are running along there. One set of antennas is right here, another set's back here, and then one is back here that you just can't see. These are the white antennas right there. This, I believe, is the alpha sector, and it's up against the penthouse. You can see them, they're white, but we've included a second photo sim because we're willing to paint these to match the penthouse. And as you can see, they match pretty well. Yes, it sticks up a couple of feet above it, but overall, it's a very good match. Same thing here. Here is another sector that we're proposing, just 2 antennas. These are white antennas. They can be painted and they would look like that. It's really up to the board what they want. This is the gamma sector, more visible. We know it's more visible. Unfortunately, there's not much you can do to hide these things. It's a line of sight technology. These are with white antennas, and these are with colored. You know, I think it's a personal preference of the board what they like, what you like. This just talks about, and I'll just summarize it. Like Mike said, we have provided very detailed information about the emissions from this facility. We are in full compliance. We have shown that we're in full compliance. Mike has asked for some additional information, and we're gonna, you know, I was supposed to call him today to talk about that. I didn't get the opportunity, but here's some information that we gave Mike that he asked for in his first memo. And this is just, again, you're looking down at the rooftop, and you have the antennas are where the colored markings are. And those colored markings basically reference emission signal strength. And these are just blow-ups. What you need to know is basically green, if you could be at that spot on the roof in the green, and you are not receiving 2% of the signal that we are legally permitted to emit. Blue is the only area that you get to, I'm sorry, not blue. It's red, and then at yellow, that's 100% of what we can legally emit. The point of this is the signals are so low power that as you get away from the antennas, and this rooftop doesn't have public access, so it's not a problem. There's no health concern whatsoever. The engineer has signed off on it. We are in full compliance with the FCC requirements. And I don't know.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Oh, yes, sir.
So that's a disk, right? Does the frequency radiate out in a sphere or in a disk?
Well, it's going to radiate out in based upon the lobes that are there. It's going to have a certain. It doesn't necessarily go in a disk per se. It can actually generate, like in this case, you can see the blue or the yellow. It's going kind of straight out.
My question basically is: this is a two-dimensional drawing in 3 dimensions. Do the people below this exist within the yellow?
So no, that's not going to be in there at all. No, these things shoot out towards the horizon. So it's not like this is not an omni type of an antenna where it shoots 360 degrees in every which way. Not at all. These are panel directional antennas. They shoot generally towards the horizon.
There is some vertical plane of radio frequency though. And that's one of the things that we asked for in our second completeness memo. And I could run through some examples if you like after Scott's presentation.
Yeah, and Mike, I was supposed to get a hold of you today. I didn't get a chance to. I'm sorry. We've asked our consultant vendor to do that, and they've come back and said, we'd like to talk about that. It's going to be pretty expensive, and it's not going to show anything, you know, it's not going to show you any issues. You're still going to be in full compliance, but I wanted to talk to you about that.
Scott, can you go back to the picture that shows the coverage target area all the way back to where you had the this one.
Like this?
Okay. Yeah, on air coverage. What exactly does that mean?
That means those are the sites that are turned on. They are currently on. So you have in these areas, you should have that's the service that you see there in the blue or purplish blue. Mm-hmm. They're on right now. They're existing sites.
Is that blue in Columbia County? This is Columbia County, right? The blue.
Yes.
Okay. Now the green, proposed coverage.
Yes.
Is that the Hudson River?
This is the Hudson River. This is Hudson right here. The problem we're having is this is, I can't see, honestly. The hospital site is up here, I believe. Yes. It just can't make it all the way down here with the amount of people and usage right now. So we need to put a new site in here in order to relieve
Just to
capacity.
cover that area. And a lot
Exactly.
of the Hudson River.
And it covers the Hudson River too, correct?
And part of Greene County.
Yes, yes.
Stronger on the, Teresa, your point's, go back one slide.
Go back one slide.
Yeah. No, another slide. Yeah, that's a stronger, that makes your point stronger, Teresa.
That's where I want to be, right?
So that's a lot of Greene County.
That's a heck of a lot.
Yeah,
and Hudson River.
But
Very small amount on Hudson.
And
I
you
understand.
never looked in Greene County.
I'm sorry, what?
That's a lot of Greene County, and you never looked over there at all for.
Thank you, Larry.
We wouldn't, because while we show this slide, like I said, 700 megahertz signal travels very, very far. That is not the determining factor as to where to put a new site. This is. If we were to go and put a site in Greene County, and Rick can speak to this much better than I can, but if we put it in Greene County, we would never get that service that you see right there. So unfortunately, because the 2100 megahertz frequency it's our limiting factor here, because it only goes so far due to the nature of the high frequency.
Is there a way to tell the percentage that we're getting compared to the percentage that Greene County is getting?
I don't know. I mean, you can look at the maps, and like on this one.
Okay, this one doesn't show as much as the other one. The other one shows that most of Greene County is getting it.
Correct.
So that's why I'm saying, do you have numbers that will support what you're saying?
Well, the support that I'm saying goes to, if, like I said, if we took this site away and put one in Greene County, you're still going to have a big deficiency in your city, because you're not getting this. And that's critical to our network.
Could you go back to the other slide for a second? All right, so we have the circled area, and then if you go into Hudson, there's a couple of slips of green here. In my screen it's purple, but you're calling it blue. What is that?
One area.
It was green, blue, and then some green going east, I guess.
I think I know what you're talking about. So so what's happening there, I believe, is you have some topography issues. As you know, as you go east, you're going up a hill. You're going up an elevation. And my guess is that you're hitting, it's kind of leveled out where you see to the east where the green is. It's kind of more or less a straight line. That's probably the same elevation. So the signal's not getting any higher than that, but then it's coming down over the hill just to bleed into that little, what I'm going to call a valley area.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, but why isn't all that expanse of blue that's surrounding that island of green, why isn't that hitting that green, that area?
Rick, you want me to talk on this?
I would love for you to do that.
Okay. So what that is, the blue is the existing coverage right now.
Yeah.
The green is the added coverage. So what you're seeing in that little speckle of green is just that if you go to the slide before it, there is no coverage there. And once we add it, that will get in there basically just enough to show up on this map. Now, like Scott's saying, this is the 700 megahertz carrier, which is our carrier that provides the greatest amount of coverage, but the smallest amount of bandwidth. So it does provide coverage. It does not provide very much data at all, which is why we use 21 megahertz, and PCS and some other frequencies as well provides the coverage. So, like you're saying, how much is it getting into Greene County?
A lot.
It's actually not nearly as much as it looks like. If you take out the river, because most people aren't making calls on the river, it's actually very little into Greene County. Regardless, it's designed for Hudson. And then if you look at the 2100 megahertz map there, it's really not getting into Greene County almost at all if you exclude the river. It's literally just a sliver.
Are the antennas on the hospital building, are they the same 2100 megahertz?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So if you see like
Verizon operates at 4 licensed frequencies under 4G, 700 megahertz being the lowest frequency. They do certain things on that with voice, a little bit on data. The highest of the 4 is 2100 megahertz, and I've asked them to provide coverage maps for both the low band and the high band as a comparison.
That's a good idea.
The trade-off is exactly what we're talking about, just based on the physics. Something that is operated at higher frequency, it's going to have a lower coverage footprint. And that's always been the rub, even back to the early days of cellular and PCS. This is cellular, LTE, low band, and advanced wireless services, high band. This is all evolved. So this, I think Teresa and Laura, you picked up on something very important here. But I've heard municipalities in the past say, you know what? They have enough coverage. Their 700 megahertz looks great. You can't do that because they are licensed to roll out all of their 4G licenses. In fact, they're mandated by the federal government to do that. So much more optimistic service coverage, as you picked up on, for that low band frequency, but much less. And if you look over even under the 700 megahertz over to Greene County, and by the way, there is a site off to the left there that's in Athens. The one down below is in Catskill, which I believe is a rooftop or a small tower on a rooftop in the city. You can see it's got a pretty small localized coverage pattern. And I think that's what they're going for here in Hudson, is maybe not that small of a footprint, but they're looking to cover the downtown, the western part of the city. And another thing that I asked for that they provided were those earlier charts that you saw, what they call the Hudson site. That's their title of it. And maybe that's why they didn't name this one Hudson, but that's the hospital roof. That's Verizon's site name for where their antennas on the hospital. And one thing that we did ask for is, prove to us that the usage within the city of Hudson is being exhausted. And the coverage maps are just part of that story. The other area is to look at that sector that faces to the river from the hospital and show us real data that backs up your position of need here, that there is capacity that's being used up. And we're still reviewing that information, but I want to note that that's part of the story that is provided. So in short, it's both coverage footprint and it's also capacity. And I'll do my best to articulate that in the memo once all the responses are in.
Thank you.
Board, what I would really like to do, since this is the public hearing and we haven't heard from the public, and in the, we also have a time issue here. I would really like to open this up to public comment now. And I would like to invite Alexandra Semchenko, Sam Semchenko, who has been very involved and would like to share some information with us. So Sam, if you are ready, I know you're going to share your screen.
Yes, I will. Let me just open it up.
Sam she lives on Warren Street, and I have given her 10 minutes for the board.
Okay.
And by all means, Sam, if you'd like to include Michael Kohlberg in your presentation, feel free to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Michael. Michael also lives on Warren Street, right up the street from Sam.
Okay, I'm just trying to share my screen for a moment. Bear with me with this. Oops. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, let's see if I can just do it from the. Okay. So I just really wanted to do a quick run through an actual visual reality of what will be seen perhaps in the historic district of Providence Hall and the proposed antennas. So right here, if we're on Promenade Hill, which is sort of the start of the historic district, you could see that you will be able to see the roof line. Same thing if you're on Front Street, you'll be able to see the roof, you'll be able to see the antennas. If you move up, we're walking towards the building and you move up to First Street, the edge of Prison Alley, same thing, more visible. On First Street itself, you can see the entire roof. If you are on Warren Street now, if you've turned the corner and you're on the corner of First and Warren, and you're looking through one of the yards of our shopkeepers at 102, you can see the roof line is visible. If I had a shot out of their window of their house and their shop, you'd absolutely be able to see the roof line of Providence Hall. Now, on the property border, if we're walking along the border of properties on Warren Street, same thing on 102, of course, you can see the building roof line. Now, if we move up, we're walking north now on Warren Street to 108 in the backyard, visible. If you're looking out the window, roof line is visible.
Where is this? Where is this window?
This is on 108 Warren Street, 2 houses in.
Okay.
From First Street. So from that property, yes, you'd be able to see. From another window, exactly the same vantage. And you can see Bliss Towers in the background. Let's give you some perspective. On the property line at Prison Alley, at the board juncture of the end of the property line in Prison Alley, again, you'd be able to see roof line. One more house in, 112, same thing, visible. In the yard, visible. Out the window, the roof line is visible. I just did a little simulation here. It doesn't bear any resemblance to the tubular antennas, but I had done this before we had any information quite a while ago. And this is between 112 and 114. You may very well be able to see an antenna through that, but you can see the roof line. 114 from across the street. Again, you can see the roof of Providence Hall. 114 to 116, you can see the roof of Providence Hall. From the window of 116, you can see the entire roof line. So all these, from all the residences on the east side of Warren Street and actually the west side too, but I wasn't able to get photos from them. You can see the roof line from these historic buildings. Now, for historic sake, I wanted to present the fact that walking tours have been going on in Hudson for decades. This is one little pamphlet from about 20 years ago. And they're talking about each of the houses at 116. They say, well, look, over the garden fence or through the keyhole, and you'll see the garden. And in this case, actually, you'll see the antennas. You can see the roof line. If you were doing this walking tour from across the street, you see the fence, you see the roof line. You'll actually look over the fence, again, you see the roof line. And this is on the property line at the back of 116, between 116 and 118. Seems redundant, but I'm just trying to press home my point that yes, the roof is visible from all of these vantage points. 120, 118 to 120 on the property line. 120 to 122 on the property line. 124, 126 to 128, 128 to 130. Now we're almost to the corner of 2nd Street and Warren. This is the view of 134. And I just wanted to put in the information here that all of these historic buildings will be, data suggests that when they do put these antennas in the neighborhoods, these properties are devalued by as much as 20% because of the juxtaposition of the antennas to the properties. So we should keep that in mind. Lower property values are not something that I'm sure people of Warren Street are yearning for. This is the view of 136 Warren Street, which is now becoming a new bistro. And I wanted to show how this connects. Again, you can see at the property line here, this roof line will be visible from the bistro. This is the view actually from 2nd Street. And you can see the roof line. This is the fence that shields the bistro from the public at the moment. You can see the roof line there. And you'll see that if people are dining within the bistro, they'll have a wonderful view of the roof and the antennas. This is a view of Columbia Street and 2nd Street. Again, clear view all around. The other side, Columbia and 1st Street. And I wanted to show this because this is such a salient point that we've tried to make, that Providence Hall is in a high wind, high lightning strike area. And just last month, the top of this tree was sheared off by the high winds. So we're talking, there's a danger here when these antennas are put on the top of this 40-year-old building. I know they're going to be welded to an iron infrastructure of some sort, but still, there's going to be a fall line. There's going to be a risk that the antennas will be blown off this building. Or worse, that lightning will strike and cause a fire. Because I have seen nothing about prevention of fire or lightning strikes or anything of that sort in this proposal yet. I don't know what they're planning to do about that, but it's important. So anyway, as in summary, just the view shed within this historic district will be adversely affected by the antennas and visible from most vantage points within this locale. Properties within the district can be devalued by as much as 20%. And Providence Hall is located within an area prone to experiencing high winds and lightning strikes, factors that could affect the antenna stability and lead to dangerous and life-threatening antenna falls. And I have to just note that I'm not sure about due diligence, but I imagine people on the top of Bliss Towers and then saying, where, if we can't do it on Bliss Towers, should we put these antennas? Did they look far and wide? No. They just looked down from the rooftop of Bliss Towers and they saw Providence Hall. I'm sorry. I don't think a lot of work was done here to really find a suitable space, because this is not a suitable space. This is a space that is home, that is off the tax rolls and houses people with disabilities and who are elderly and who are at risk. So I just think this is a really bad choice. I have to just put that here. And since the question was brought up, and I know we can't speak to safety, I also want to show you a clip from a Senate hearing. Although Verizon application cannot now, as they've so dutifully noted, they can't be denied based upon health and safety issues. This clip's importance will be made clear as we see. This was from the February 6th Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee hearing, where Senator Blumenthal addressed the FCC and the FDA. And you'll hear what he says at the end. So there's really no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here as far as health and safety is concerned. And I want to just share with you, bear with me.
we're actually not hearing the audio on the video clip.
And since it's supposed to be about 5G, is that even relevant? Because this is not a 5G application.
4G and 5G are related.
They're not related.
Here.
Bless you.
I still can't hear the video.
I can't
Can't either.
Can you hear it?
No.
No.
Okay.
Sam,
Alexandra, is there
are
a
you
way
going
you
to
can
submit the PowerPoint? Maybe you could put a link in the PowerPoint that you submit to the planning board?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what?
If you're submitting this to the planning board, and thank you for this, by the way, if you could put the link to the video at the end of the PowerPoint?
Yes, I have. I think I have included a link, but I can send that off to you as well and under separate cover in another document, so you can have the whole video.
That would
And
be
yes,
great.
it is 5G that they're talking about here, although the only difference between 4G and 5G is that 4G is the carrier wave and 5G has the all of the other waves embedded in it. So they are, it's relevant.
I'm
It's very
sorry,
relevant.
not even close. I'm sorry, that's wrong.
It
is.
I beg to differ. What
Better talk.
what does 5G use to carry it? It is 4G carrier waves that have all the signals embedded within them, and that's the only distinguishing factor between the two, is that the microwaves are embedded within 4G, and then it becomes 5G to carry all of the data. That's the only difference.
Alexandra,
Modulated in a way.
Could you bring us back, Alexandra? Thank you for this, but could you let that go and bring us back?
I will let that go. Yes, but I just wanted to since the
No, I don't mean let your point go. Get rid of your what's this called?
Green.
PowerPoint.
Oh, yes.
Screen
Yes.
share. Yeah, turn off the
Yeah,
screen share.
Okay, stop share.
Perhaps Mr. Musso can address the difference between 4G and 5G and explain it.
Yeah, before we do that, I just want to say thank you very much to Alexandra. That was wonderful. I just wanted to ask Alexandra if I'm correct in thinking that several of those houses on Warren Street also have very elaborate, I guess you could say, back porches, porches that go to the entire height of their buildings. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And these towers will be 10 feet, yet 10 feet above the roof line, as if I am interpreting the original plans correctly. They're going to be about 10 feet higher than the roof line itself.
And I just wanted to clear up a few things before, because I have a feeling that the 4G, 5G explanation might be a little involved. I just wanted to ask Scott, if we could just go back, well, we don't have to. I guess we can all remember that picture where the antennas will be and where the workstations will be. So everybody, if you think of that picture that was shown to us, that graph, I guess you could say. My question then is, when other companies come to us to also put up antennas and workstations, because this is what's going to happen. How many antennas and workstations can that space hold?
Well,
I don't think that's a question for Scott. I don't think that's a question for Verizon.
I think you're right. It's a question for you, Mike.
It would all depend on first of all, if somebody like T-Mobile and AT&T or basically the other two carriers at this point. Sprint has consolidated with T-Mobile. It would all depend on if they could procure a lease. If this building owner, given all the controversy with this application, is willing to entertain another lease, all right?
So say that they could get a lease. Right now, what we all know, and the public should know, and the board should know if they don't know, is that if once this is approved, if it's approved, then we really don't have a way to say no to the other two carriers that are currently in our area. So what I'd like to know is if the other two carriers come to us and they can get a lease, how many of the workstations and the antennas can that building accommodate?
It's very hard for me to answer that. And when you're talking about base stations, you think of this, the geometry of this roof. We were up there in October for a site visit.
Right.
That is going to depend if what the other carrier needs are. And I haven't seen any data. No one's been in front of you from the other carriers. From an RF emission standpoint, I've worked on roofs that have all four carriers, roofs of a bigger geometry that are able to accommodate the central cabinets in the middle of the roof and have enough room to put antennas up in accordance with the code. So it's very speculative. Laura, it's a good question. It's a planning related question, certainly, but I think to be fair, it's very speculative at this point. The RF emissions, you know, these are divided out by sector. It doesn't all add up. These are directional towards the horizon. There's 3 different arrays that go in 3 directions, essentially covering 360 degrees. Can, from an RF emissions, a rooftop like this accommodate more? Yes, it could. It could, but I would put the logistics that Ms. Simchenko just noted, with safety, with room, with setbacks from the roof, and other things like that. This roof doesn't have an awfully big parapet, for instance. So there's a lot of things that would depend if and when another carrier would look to this location. I really, can't talk to it. I could just say, yeah, it could be logistically feasible, but it would really depend on exactly what kind of configuration that they're proposing.
I have a question.
I also want to identify that this, I think you're getting to the concept of co-location. So if there was a new tower built, a 150-foot tower, once it's built and other companies want to co-locate on it, well, the cat's out of the bag at that point, right? You have the tower, you have a wireless facility. It's hard to say no to adding additional antennas to that tower that has gone up. Here, this is already considered a co-location because the tower, in this case, is the building. And so this company is proposing to co-locate on the building. And so in a sense, it's already the co-location. So you would treat the next person the same way you're treating this one.
Do they have to come to the planning board? The next
They
people?
would, yes.
Yes, but once you have one company up there, you basically cannot say no to another company. I mean,
well, that's not quite true. I mean, that you'd have to go through the same analysis that you're going through now. You'd have to determine whether
there are 3 companies on the hospital, I believe. I think, right? I mean, there's 3 companies on the hospital.
I'm sure the hospital is happy to have the revenue.
Okay, excuse me, board. We do have, Glenn has been waiting very patiently to ask a question.
Go ahead.
We'll have time with this.
No, I didn't want to ask a question at this point. I just, I had a 2-page memo I wanted to read when the next person gets to speak.
So Glenn, thank you, by the way, for sending me your remarks. I did receive.
I'm glad that you got them, Betsy.
Yes, I did. So please feel free to go ahead and make your remarks.
Right now?
Yes, right now.
Again, how long do I have? Because I think it might go just a little bit over 3 minutes. I've got like 2 pages and a paragraph.
We'll go
ahead.
Give you what you need.
And the reason I write this out, to reiterate, I'm not a good public speaker, so I wrote this out today so it's fresh, and here it goes.
Go ahead.
It occurs to me, as I speak now before the planning board for the third time against Verizon's proposal to build 4G, 5G cellular towers on the roof of my home of 13 years at Providence Hall. It occurs to me that the planning board remains undecided regarding this matter. I sincerely hope that is true, and I thank the planning board for the opportunity to express my views on the subject. Living on the top floor, the 5th floor, there's 5 floors at Providence Hall, not 6. Living on the top floor at Providence Hall, I remain anxious and disconcerted about the possibility of this proposal becoming a reality. Providence Hall is an old building, almost 40 years old, a residential building. Is it now to morph into a residential/industrial hybrid? People live in this building. It hasn't been a factory in 4 decades. Dual zoning makes about as much sense as a private for-profit corporation owning a public housing project. The cause of my anxiety is this. For decades now, experts have warned people to limit the amount of time we spend holding our cellular phones to our ears because of the harmful effects of the small doses of radiation generated by these small devices. And as these devices get faster and more powerful, the corresponding RF antennas that enable those devices to function are exponentially more powerful. If a small handheld device is dangerous, how much more so are the cell towers that power and enable this technology? The roof of a longtime residential building housing over 100 elderly and disabled people hardly seems like a proper place to plant a forest of cellular antennas. A skeptic might ask, what about the large array of towers on Columbia Memorial Hospital? That would be like comparing apples to oranges, because the hospital is a business, whereas Providence Hall is a residence. No one person is at the hospital 24/7, 365 days a year. We residents of Providence Hall are here pretty much all the time. There will be no escaping the constant exposure to the harmful effects of the radiation generated by these antennas. They relentlessly spew out their invisible pollution 24/7, 365 days a year. Honestly ask yourselves, would I want such a controversial project on the roof of my home or anywhere near it? And what about the surrounding neighborhood? The radiation exposure could be even worse for Bliss Towers to the north of Providence Hall. The same goes for the homeowners in the 100 block of Warren Street to the south of Providence Hall, with the additional negative impact that these residences have a direct line of sight to the roof of Providence Hall. And we've already seen those great pictures that Sam showed. Think about that for a moment. Imagine paying good money for an historic 200-year-old house full of architectural stateliness and grandeur, and then waking up one morning and looking out your bedroom window to the ugly sight of several factory-like chimneys on the roof of the residential building just across Prison Alley. So in addition to the invisible pollution generated by the 4G, 5G towers, there will be the visible pollution of the towers themselves. I don't know if any pictures are available from the Bliss Towers direction of view, but about 15 years ago, I was visiting on the 9th floor of an apartment that faces south. Talk about $1 million view. If it's true that a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a picture taken from the 9th floor there facing southwards would be worth 2,000 words. And now Verizon wants to ruin that view. I have nothing personal against Verizon. They are in the enviable position of selling a service that many people want to buy. But their lack of social consciousness and their choice of primary location for this project leaves much to be desired. Make them choose a different location. It is a bad idea to let this scheme proceed in the residential heart of the highest population density in Hudson. In conclusion, I remind the planning board that as the door closes on a very difficult year, if people remember only one thing, please let it be that all lives matter. All human life matters, regardless of a person's rank or station. People matter more than any artificially contrived entity. And the people who live in this community must take precedence over tourists. I humbly ask the planning board to silence these latter-day Towers of Babel by rejecting V's proposal in its current form. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Thank you, Glenn.
Chairwoman, can I go back and just clarify a statement I made earlier?
So go back to you.
When we're talking about the hospital, I was trying to get at the fact that the hospital has a financial incentive to maximize the use of the building. It's a tall structure in that area. Here, any other co-location is going to have to go through the same exact application that Verizon is going through now. There's no automatic location that just somehow goes in without you reviewing it. So I just want the board to be aware of that. It's somewhat different than a tall tower where once it's up, the view shed is the view shed, and you're looking at, one additional large tower, antenna packet on a large tower. This is the building, and you're going to get to look at it again and again if that's what's proposed.
Thank you, Victoria. I think in the essence of time, this really isn't supposed to be a conversation back and forth. This is really supposed to be an opportunity for the public to speak. And Michael Kohlberg has been waiting extremely patiently. I'm sorry, Michael, to throw you out of cycle here.
No.
And then I would like to suggest, once Michael has made his comments, that it really is, it's after 8 board, and we still have another public hearing and a lot of work to do. So I'm going to ask that we continue this public hearing to January. And at that point, we also will have replies from Scott on Mike's December memo, as well as the leaf off sightline photos. So this conversation is certainly not over. So Michael, with that.
Okay, thank you, Betsy. So it's very hard to follow Glenn, and I was intending to follow Betsy, who's also difficult to follow, but what I'm going to say begins with where she left off. In the last meeting, the lawyer who was here went to great lengths when we were talking about the structural integrity of the building to talk about how they were going to be placed upon rather than affixed to the roof of Providence Hall. She also indicated they're not that heavy. The engineer stated that, in fact, he kind of wandered off, but he said that this equipment is not subject to the fall zone requirement that is mandated. I went trying to find support for that statement and couldn't find it, so I would hope that Verizon would be able to supply that at the next meeting. I also wanted to mention that in September, the New York Times published a climate map, and if you Google New York Times climate map, it'll come up. And the information was gleaned from a company called 427, which is responsible for giving future climate information to the finance industry to support infrastructure investing. And Hudson is in a very high-risk hurricane zone moving forward. So we have equipment that is light, not affixed to anything, that is going to be placed on a building that already suffers from wind damage. That's one thing. That's my safety speech. The rest of what I want to say really has to do with finance, although it's going to meander, and I will try to be as succinct as possible. The engineer also dismissed my concern last time and around modulation, and I spoke about modulation being a concern of mine, and he said that all of this technology has modulation. And I went and tried to up-level my extremely primitive understanding of this, and he was right. It does all have to do with modulation. My understanding now are there 2 levels of technology. There are carrier waves, which create the interface, and then there's pulsation and modulation, which actually carries the data. And what just didn't make sense to me is, why would the FCC go out of its way to limit and shield the telecom companies from liability if they felt, in fact, that it caused no harm? Well, it seems that they knew in 1996 that it causes harm, and that document is just reappearing, and it's reappearing in preparation for oral arguments which have been set for January 25th at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, and they are scheduled for January 25th, 2021, and they are going to revisit the FCC's disallowance of any consideration for impact on health. So all of this stuff is really going to get a fair hearing at last. And the FCC obviously has they've controlled the narrative up until now. The studies that they cite really looked at carrier waves. And it turns out that the damage to human body, and I am not an advocate saying that, yes, this is really dangerous. I'm saying the truth is we don't know. It has not yet been decided. No one can say with certainty whether this is damaging. All of the evidence points, all of the studies point to the fact that it is, but maybe they're wrong. People say they're junk science. I'm not a scientist, but it is in fact undecided. And it will get a fair hearing beginning the end of January, hopefully a fair hearing. And then we'll see what comes from that. So the reason I'm bringing it up is not to argue about health and safety, but why is it relevant here? It's relevant because if it's going to be determined eventually whether this causes harm. And it's very similar to what happened when I was growing up with tobacco. Tobacco was totally safe. Ask any lawyer for any tobacco company. As I grew up, it shifted slowly, and I'm shortening this to, well, tobacco is unsafe, but people choose to smoke. And then suddenly liability was dodged because they shifted it on to the people who were smoking until addiction medicine grew up to a point where that couldn't be dodged. Here, no one is agreeing to be radiated. So what's going to happen? And this is the part about Hudson and finances. The telecom companies have a legal shield until that is removed. And that's going to take a long time to litigate. Hudson doesn't. So my suggestion is if anybody's going to look anywhere, they have the owner of the building indemnify the city so that as damage is determined to occur, it is the owner's responsibility. And otherwise you're setting up a situation where Verizon comes in, they charge its customers, they then cause harm to its customers, and then the city in which the customers live, which means the taxpayers have to pay for it. So they're kind of doing triple damage. So something could be done, I think, to encourage the person who owns the building to come and participate in this. Now, when that happens, I have a whole bunch of stuff to say about insurance because there's ways of dodging that. How do I know that? Because the telecom companies teach them how to dodge it, but there's a certain kind of insurance that they need to get. That's one thing. The second thing is that, as was mentioned last time, I don't know about the tax exemption that a Section 8 building has. I did try to find out. I found out, I think, 3 different opinions, and none of them agreed. And I know from having legal tax questions in my lifetime, they're very hard to get a definitive answer on. You certainly don't want to get an answer from a lawyer. You want to get an answer from in this case, the administrative body. So the owner would need to go to the person from whom he gets the tax exemption and get a statement saying that, in fact, you will not harm your tax exemption if you move forward. In the event that that doesn't happen, then he should need to contract with the city and say that he commits to, with each tenant who is currently there, at the very least, with each tenant who's currently there, to keep them for the length of their tenancy under the current terms of the lease. In other words, he takes the hit, not them. And I think that it should go on forever, but at least that far. And then as apartments are vacated, if a concession needs to be made, he could do what he wants with those apartments. So those are the kinds of things. I think that Hudson is vulnerable in several areas because of the fluctuation in the health and safety. And what's happening here, health and safety wise, as best I understand it, is that up until now, they started being able to measure the carrier waves, and it did damage, but not so much. Then the ability to look at the pulsation modulation came into being, and that was more, but really what they should have been looking at, they now understand, is the impact not of the technology, but the impact upon the biology. So now that they're able to link the two, that is, I believe, it's the foundation for the court granting oral arguments, where up until now they've said no and let the FCC run with it. But I think that that may be done.
Michael? Yeah, could you wrap up?
That's it.
Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate. Dewan, did you raise? I thought I saw a hand raised. Dewan?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Dewan, please make your comment.
Okay, I am a alderman on Second Ward. I talked to all the people in Providence Halls, and none of them are agree with this tower. I just wanted to represent their thought. That's all.
Thank you, Dewan. I appreciate your comment.
Okay.
All right, so board, I would like to suggest, because it is going on 8:15 now, that we continue the public hearing until next month. So would someone like to make that motion?
I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And it's not a discussion. How do we, Michael brought up some interesting things. And of course, I'm sorry, the other fellow that spoke, I forgot his name, from the towers that lives in the, yes. How do we follow up on some of these, some of the things, for example, that Michael said, because, they were more specific to potential legal and insurance and, 501c3 issues. How is that followed up on from this point?
Well, Laura, we have both Mike Musso and Victoria to guide us from a legal and telecom.
Okay, so I'd like some, not today, but some comments from Michael and Victoria on some of the points that Michael made. And
I'm sure that they'll be forthcoming.
Well, I don't know about that. A lot of times the public speaks and then we just let it go. So
how about they will be forthcoming?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I had a motion, John, I think to.
Sorry, Stephen has something.
I'm sorry, just one very, very quick thing. I mean, first of all, I just wanted to say to Glenn, I reject the idea that you're not a good public speaker. I'm so grateful for your eloquence and participating in this hearing, and to everyone that shared tonight. So I urge you to continue doing that. One point about Alex's, Ms. Semchenko's presentation, I think it really powerfully highlighted the visual impact that the antennas could have. And Mr. Olson said earlier that essentially the planning board has the option to sort of pick paint colors to mask those, but in fact there are much more sophisticated screening options available to us, and
yes, there are.
Mr. Musso has made us available of some of those options. So I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that.
Painting's kind of the cheap way of going.
Yeah, there are some really sophisticated options for screening that stuff effectively, which I think we should look at as conditions.
So, board, we really need to move on now. I'm sorry. This is a really interesting conversation, but we got to move it. So, John, I think I have a motion from you.
You do.
Do I have a second, please?
I second.
Thank you, Teresa. All in favor of continuing the public hearing at our January meeting? Say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. We will see you again in January.
Thanks, everyone.
So our final public hearing tonight is for 620 Union Street. You all will remember our friend David Kessler and Chad from Taconic Engineering. This is a public hearing for 620 Union Street, a revised site plan application from Taconic Engineering for the 620 Union Hotel. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
I move.
Thank you, Laura. Do I have a second?
Steve.
Thank you, Steve. All in favor? Aye. Okay. David and Chad, welcome back. I think we're all quite familiar with your project. If you would bring us up to date, please, on your site plan amendments.
Sure. Betsy, thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome back.
Board, thank you for your time tonight. I just want to set the stage a bit, and then I'm going to hand it off to my design team. Due to some complexities of the site, we needed to simplify the construction a bit, and as such, we've made some minor modifications to previously approved site plan that Chad and Mike Fenney will take us through. Now I'd like to hand it to Chad Lindbergh.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Ed. So from an engineering perspective, these revisions are very minor. We're pulling the L of the building forward. And there we go. So we can see the area, if you could highlight it, the area of the building that's being expanded. We're just pulling that forward towards Union Street, about 19 and a half feet. These revisions have no impact on the density requirements of the Central Commercial District. We don't exceed any of those requirements, so we're still building within right. There's been just a very slight modification to some of the drainage proposed from the site to pick up for the shift in the building footprint. And from a lighting standpoint, if you move on to the next page, Ed, from a lighting standpoint, this addition actually helps shield us, and we don't have any increase in lighting for the project. So, like I said, from an engineering standpoint, very minor impact. I'd like to pass it over to Dale with Wagner Hodgkins to review the landscape plan.
And Chad, I might just add for your benefit that the building is not growing in height at all.
That's correct.
That was a concern of this board.
That's correct. There's no change in height, as we don't, like I said, we don't exceed any of our bulk regulation requirements there. Yeah.
And thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dale. Sorry to interrupt.
You're just making the sidewalks smaller.
No.
No?
We're making the building wider. Deeper.
So that would take more room on the sidewalk? No?
No, we'll explain that to you, Teresa, no problem.
Yeah, so really what, Teresa, what the what's happening is there's a reduction in the width of the landscape at that end of the building.
Okay, I get it.
So the landscape concept really remains the same as it was before, but due to the revisions to keep the overall landscape in place, the things were basically unchanged are the entry garden, the dining terrace, the open lawn, and the spa terrace gardens up against the building. But the changes to the landscape plan do include a reduction in the size of the hammock grove, which is that space right there where the building has extended toward the street. The sidewalk stays the same. There's a relocation access for the stairwell that used to be in the corner of the building where you see number 12 on the plan now. It's now further where number 19 is. And there's been a change in the spa terrace with the addition of a sauna. The hot tub has moved from the side to the middle, but there's still a lot of lush plantings around that terrace. So very little visually has changed in the landscape. So I think Mike is going to talk a bit about some of the architectural changes.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. Yeah, just to run you through, this was the previously approved plan that had largely, a renovation project of the McKinstry Mansion here in the 1906 edition, with a new restaurant lounge that would be brought in front of the 1906 addition, and then the dining terrace out in front. The addition is largely guest rooms, 3 stories of guest rooms, and then on the first floor, you have a 2nd story restaurant space and restoration of the existing porches, and then some green roofs up above, and then the upper balconies. And then the top floor of the McKinstry Mansion remains guest room. So this is what was previously approved. I'll point your attention to the basement level. That's really what's causing the change, is that large amount of excavation and shoring that would be required along the alley was really bringing some complexities to the construction constructability of the project. So we've redesigned the basement to be pulled back from the alley a bit and to really reduce the size of that. If we go to the next plan, you can see it there. It's really been dramatically reduced. The only thing that's really abutting the alley is the one egress stair. So it's much less shoring, much less sensitive excavation. But when we do this, we've really lost a lot of back of house space and storage space. That's really important to the overall operations of the restaurant and hotel. And so we are adding a new storage room, fairly large storage room on the inside corner of each floor on all 3 floors, which helps provide the back of house space, housekeeping, storage, things like that on each level rather than all in the basement level. And when you do that, that slid the one guest, that has to slide the second exit stair forward, which slides one guest room forward. And then to keep the architectural aesthetic appropriate and balanced, then we added a new guest room to balance out the facade so that facade as designed previously would remain. So to look at what that does, and then before we go to the next slide, so what that does is it adds 3 guest rooms per floor from what was previously approved. And in the reconfiguration of things, we had a suite style room on the first floor of the 1906 edition. It was a kind of an oversized double room with a sitting room and fireplace. We've decided to just make that 2 standard rooms rather than an oversized suite room. So your room count went from 51 rooms to 55 rooms in the reconfiguration of this. So as far as what does that do to the exterior of the building, if we go to the next slide, really these elevations remain completely unchanged. The alley elevation remains exactly the same as previously proposed on the top of the screen. And then on the lower half of the screen, you can see that elevation is remaining largely intact. The only difference is we're adding another small dormer to break up that facade. The extended facade, which would match the dormers in the adjacent facade. And so it was important for us to slide the previous face of the old building all the way to the left of the drawing. When we slid it forward, that we keep the design of that exactly as previously shown. So that's what's happening now. If we move to the next slide, the other elevations you can see, really the main difference on the west elevation on the top of the screen is that has extended 1 bay to the right. So that group of 3 windows there are new, and that's what really has changed. As far as the elevations to the existing McKinstry Mansion, that's largely a restoration project. That still is exactly the way we had previously proposed it. And you can see the elevation of the new extension in the background. To show you 3-dimensionally, if you remember, we had some photorealistic renderings that we showed last time. We updated them for your convenience. We're showing you what was shown before and then proposed so you can understand it. Really, this was standing at the entranceway to the building. That has stayed exactly the same. The only difference in this rendering is we've actually updated the tree rendering to be a more commensurate with the tree branch structure and overall canopy of that tree. So we found a better tree when we did this rendering. But you can see everything else has stayed the same. And then as we zoom out, we move towards the street, and we can see that the lawn area, gardens, hedges, all of that landscaping, the formal gardens, the restored porch to the McKinstry Mansion, all of that's remaining exactly the same. We go to the next. That's the after. Really, the only thing that has changed is the tree. We go to the next slide. So this is zooming all the way out at the intersection of the streets and looking back across the whole site. You can see the formal gardens are still there, the hedges, the 2 lawn areas, the spa terrace, and the addition in the far left. Now that's being proposed. You can see that slid out about 19.5 feet, with the only thing being modified is the hammock garden. And then zooming in now on the addition a little bit, this was kind of stepping into the main lawn, looking into the intersection of the proposed addition, and then the proposed new version of this. Go to the next slide. You can see how that has slid out. We've added the new dormer and balcony, and we just added one more bay to that building. And we've updated the tree structures. So we should mention that we did go to HPC. We did get approval and concept for the modifications. Pending successful planning board approval, then we'll jump into the more detailed drawings, which will go back to HPC for full certificate of appropriateness for all the details and materials.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
So this is a public hearing, let's remember. So I'm opening this up to public comment. Is there, perhaps you could stop screen sharing? It would be easier for me to see.
Sure.
Thank you very much. It would be easier for me to see if anybody would like to make a comment. So I'm looking for raised hands here. And I'm not seeing any. John.
I have a question actually. I noticed in the rendering that there's a fire pit. Have you gotten clearance from the city of Hudson to have an open fire?
That will be a gas unit.
Okay, but it's still an open fire.
Yeah, so we will go through the necessary permitting for that.
Okay.
But yeah, just so you know, it will be gas only.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board or from the public?
So you've gone from how many rooms to how many rooms now?
We've gone from 51 rooms to 55 rooms. It's really as a result of trying to keep the architecture aesthetically pleasing and balanced when we had to move that facade forward.
All
And
right.
the parking agreement that we had previously will just increase to reflect the new room count.
Yes, I'm sure that would be fine with David.
No problem. Well, we did 31 on 51. So what's the math?
So it would be 35 on.
31 on 51, so add 2 more. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's 33.
33, 32 and a half, 33. What, 32, 33.
33. We'll condition it at 33 parking permits when they become available through the city.
Looks good, guys. I think it looks good.
Thank you.
All right, so hearing no additional public comment, may I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I move.
Laura, do you want a second?
A second.
All right, all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Are you opposing, Larry?
No, I'm saying no.
Said nay.
I'm saying, there are no nays, is what I'm saying.
And I'm assuming there are no abstentions here. Okay, so
Sorry.
Victoria, you have prepared a draft resolution.
Actually, I had a quick question before we move to that, Betsy, if you don't mind. I mean, I know during the original presentation, my sense was that a great thing about the project was you were preserving a significant portion of your front garden, which I think benefits everybody, including Hudson and
Sure.
you guys. And clearly that's being cut back, I would say significantly. And can you explain a little bit more how much you're losing? And I guess I didn't get from your plan view, like the sort of before and after. The 3Ds were great, but I guess I'd like a little more sense of.
Ed, can you share your screen again and go to Dale's plan, the landscape plan, and I'll specifically talk about before and after.
Hey, everybody.
Are you talking square feet? Because Clark, is your question the square footage also?
That would help, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. So yeah, I'll show you that.
I mean, we'd like to know what square feet is.
Yeah, I know the exact how it's moving 19 and a half feet. If you can just go to the landscape plans there. You go to the one before. Yeah.
Okay.
So what?
Well, while you're doing that, just according to the application, it's 647.1 square feet.
Right.
19 feet
I think
deeper.
the before and after is very helpful, just as a.
Just go to the landscape plan, please. There we go.
Yeah.
So you can see all the formal garden, which is in front of the McKinstry Mansion, that all remains completely unchanged. The dining terrace and the lawn in front of the restaurant remains unchanged. The 2 trees that we're trying to save are still there.
Yeah.
And then the spa terrace and gardens buffering, the addition remain the same. The lawn, the great lawn in front of that, and the hedges remain the same. The only thing that's impacted is the hammock garden. It's a little bit more of a denser, more private garden for guests, and we had 3 hammocks in it. By the facade moving 19 and a half feet forward, you can see in the proposed. Next slide. It just condenses that hammock garden down to 2 hammocks instead of 3, but it's still a pretty lush, pretty densely, planted area. It's really meant to create some privacy to the guest rooms, whereas the more public spaces are really remaining completely unchanged.
That was extremely helpful. The before and after is what I was looking for. So thanks for that. The plan view. Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
All right, so back to Victoria, and if you would screen share the proposed resolution, please.
I have to ask Shaheem to do that. I'm on my home computer. Shaheem, would you mind bringing up the resolution? While he's doing that, I did send it around to all the board members.
Yes, so you've all had a chance to see it.
Thank you for that, by the way. I know that I was asking that we would always get that, and you did that, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
So it goes through and it recites the history that you granted approval, and then you amended one of the conditions, and that they've submitted for amended approval. That you held a hearing today. And so the first clause is that you've reaffirmed your prior seeker determination of non-significance. It means that you've looked at this change in the footprint of 647 square feet and the reduction in the garden size, and you've determined that that change won't have a significant impact rising to the level of the preparation of an environmental impact statement. And then it goes through to grant site plan approval. And I requested that prior condition, Shaheem, would you go to the next page, please? I requested that the prior condition be added as a note on the plan. Right now it says 31 parking permits, but we can change that to say 33. Yeah, board wishes.
Looks good. Yeah, if we change that to 33, then this looks good.
So
Okay.
do I have
So
a
it's
motion?
done on mine.
So do I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Laura, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Mr. Kessler, you're in business.
Thank you so much.
All right, good luck.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Okay, so that is takes care of our 4 public hearings tonight. Now to old business, and I want to thank our Colarusso friends for being so incredibly patient with us. This was a very, very big full agenda. So now on to 175 South Front Street, conditional use permit application and site plans from A. Colarusso and Son for road improvements and commercial dock operations. We're in the midst of reviewing seeker part 2 questions. We're in the environmental assessment form part 2. And we're starting tonight with question 6. And I believe, Teresa, you are a resident expert on that. This is for air quality.
Right. Okay, that's question 6. Now, this is a question that I had a lot of speculation about. Even when I first did it, which was at our last meeting, but I didn't get a chance to present. And then when I didn't present, I was pretty happy. But I was pretty happy because I said, oh, I'm going to change this. But I did have an in-depth conversation with our engineer. Are you there, Ryan?
Ryan's there. Yep.
I am.
And he did a lot. He answered a lot of my questions, because one of the things that I was concerned about is if this particular business was coming into Hudson now, this would be almost number 1, 2, or 3. It was in the top 3 questions. What would it do to the air quality of the small town? So talking to Ryan and going over everything, Ryan, I'm going to let you explain it, because you got all the questions answered. I wanted to know about, okay, my concern was the trucks were coming, and they're talking about 284 trucks coming into the plant daily. And we all know that they have to, sometimes they're waiting, so they're idling, right? Say something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now my thing was, okay, what is 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide? I mean, how many trucks idling would put that much out? And then the 3.5 tons of, what is that, nitrous oxide? How many trucks?
Nitrous oxide.
Yeah. You know, these were concerns, but Ryan answered every one of them. He went back, he did some studies, he asked other experts about it. And we both went on the Department of Environmental Protection's website. And Ryan, go ahead, answer that for me.
All right. So actually, I'm going to share my screen quick, just so we're all looking at the same question. So these are some of the the thresholds that Teresa was mentioning. So looking at under impacts to air, there's obviously a lot of very specific questions here. But you'll note even on question 6A here, it falls back to the first question of if the proposed action requires federal or state air emission permits, the action may also emit one or more of the greenhouse gases above these levels. So I did reach out to a colleague of mine in our office that deals with industrial air permitting, to specifically ask exactly whether this project, any of the proposed parts of this project, the continuation of use at the dock would require an air permit. The response I received from my colleague, so I guess just to set a baseline, what we discussed, what Teresa and I discussed, is obviously there's the trucks, the delivery trucks, and other miscellaneous vehicles coming to and from the site. Those are either gas or diesel powered. There's also going to be the loader that transports gravel from stockpiles to the conveyor, and then there's the generator, which powers the conveyor itself. So those are kind of the 3 main items we looked at: the loader, generator, and the trucks. And in my conversation with my colleague who deals with industrial air permitting, he shared with me that basically state or federal air emission permits, are only needed for stationary sources. So something that is affixed in place. So from the start, that takes out of the equation the delivery trucks, the tractor trailers, as well as the loader or any equipment moving materials around on the site. Now we wanted to take a look at the generator itself. So stationary generators at a threshold of 400 horsepower or greater do require registration. So as part of the noise study that Colarusso submitted, I believe last October, It did list the generator that is used. It's essentially a 200 horsepower mobile generator. So it is specified as a mobile generator, but it also is under the 400 horsepower threshold there. So in my conversation there, it was determined that basically none of the activities on the site are requiring a federal or state air emission permit. And that's, that was the, conversation that Teresa and I had in regard to impacts on air.
So because of that, we've answered this as no. Any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for looking into that so carefully, Teresa. I really appreciate it, and Ryan as well.
Thank
So
you.
let's move on to question 7, which is impact on plants and animals. And Steve, I know that you have been hard at work on this question.
Yes. Okay, so a number of updates I think to go through here.
Yes, please.
So one is the fact, and I guess what I'd like to propose is to kind of go through these updates and then, sort of provisionally answer question 7 to the best of our ability. So first of all, peregrine falcons have been confirmed to be nesting in the cement hopper on the ACS dock. So peregrine falcons are classified by New York State as an endangered species. And so for this reason, we've been in touch with the State Department of Environmental Conservation's Schenectady office, Region 4 Schenectady, which covers Hudson and is an involved agency in this review. I think at a minimum, based on this, confirmed discovery, we are going to need a report from the applicant about the dock operations impact on those falcons nesting on the site. So this, I think, this is a recent development, and I think has just been communicated to the applicant. But
Today.
that will, yes, today, and that will bear on some of our answers here on question 7. So I highlight that to say again that I think that we can go through and kind of do our best here, but the board should know that is pending in a new development. Now, the other thing is, in looking back at part 1 in the relevant sections for answers to question 7, there appears to be quite a bit of missing information about the flora, fauna, and habitats that will be impacted by the dock operations. So when I say that, I'm citing 3 documents, basically. One being the Seeker review in 2001 for the St. Lawrence cement plant that was proposed. The second being Appendix J in the LWRP plant, an environmental study that was conducted by Hudsonia. And finally, the Department of State Significant Habitat Program. So what I wanted to propose was to essentially go through and read into the record the missing information on impacted flora, fauna, and habitats, and ask that the applicant correct that in part 1. And with the assumption that those corrections are made, I think then provisionally answer question 7 to the best of our ability tonight. And then we can return to it once this sort of question about the impact on the endangered peregrine falcons is answered.
Stephen, just to interrupt for a moment, I think the best bet for tonight is for you to go through and identify all the missing information. But I don't think the board should attempt to assess anything until you get that information.
Okay, fair enough. Then I'll read through that, and then if it's okay, we'll move on to question 8.
Okay,
that's fine.
Okay. So for E2M, sorry, let me just get right over there.
Would you like me to share my screen with the most recent?
I would appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you.
Help us all.
So here is where we want to identify the predominant wildlife species that occupy or use the project site. So we, correctly have deer, woodchucks, coyotes, rabbits, eagles identified, and then just generally other birds. What we're proposing would need to be added are fox, otter, mink, ducks, and heron. For E2N, does the project site contain a designated significant natural community? There are 6 that we feel need to be added here. Sorry, let me just look back. Yeah, so the answer is yes, and added to the Hudson River. So those being freshwater subtidal aquatic bed, freshwater intertidal mudflat, freshwater tidal creek, freshwater tidal marsh, freshwater tidal swamp, and shrub swamp.
I cannot type that quickly, so I'm gonna just leave it blank so as to not butcher whatever, to butcher the list.
Brian, we'll have Steve send you the list
Yeah,
so that you don't have to type in time.
Hey, Betsy, just for a note of clarification, when you folks are talking about making changes to part 1, is this something that Ryan is going to do, or should I be writing really fast? Because I can't keep up with Stephen either.
Well, we'll make sure that you obviously, Pat, you're going to have all of this information as well. I don't know what the pro forma is for that. Who typically would update this form?
The form needs to be signed and submitted by the applicant. So I think the most straightforward way would be to have the applicant update the form with the requested information and resubmit with signature on the final page.
Okay, so Pat, whatever Steve sends along to Ryan, he will also send along to you. So
all right, that sounds good. And we'll add on there the peregrine falcons. Nobody at the site has seen them, but I guess they must be there, huh?
They're there. They're now, as of October, they've been listed on the DEC website as being there. And yeah, it's now official on the DEC website.
They must really like the place if they moved in.
Yeah, good fishing. Yep. Okay, Steve, please continue.
Okay, now on E2O, does the project site contain species of plant or animal that is listed by the federal government or New York State as endangered or threatened? Or does it contain any areas identified as habitat for endangered or threatened species? We've correctly got listed long-eared bat, bald eagle, and least bittern. To that list, we should add American eel, an imperiled species, short-nosed sturgeon, federally endangered, Atlantic sturgeon, federally endangered, alewife floater, a critically imperiled or imperiled species, tidewater mucket, northern harrier. And by the way, tidewater mucket is critically imperiled, northern harrier is threatened, and also, as we said, the peregrine falcon, which is endangered. In terms of threatened plants, golden club, Long's bittercrest, and smooth beggar tick. And I will share this list, of course, so you guys, I hear the furious typing. But on E2P, questions of special concern, the answer should be changed to yes, and the following should be included here. Osprey, Cooper's hawk, sharp-shined hawk, red-shouldered hawk, common nighthawk, eastern box turtle, spotted turtle, Jefferson salamander, blueback herring, and then plants, kidney leaf mud plantain, strapleaf arrowhead, and heartleaf plantain. So
well done, Ryan.
Good job, Stephen.
Steve to provide works, right? So I will share that list with Pat, with you, and with Ryan, and Victoria's recommendation. I guess I propose at this stage we move on to question 8.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. That's very thorough and very important for all of us to be aware of. So
Great
just think,
job.
Before we move on, I think we should give the applicants some guidance. In addition to correcting the EAF, is there more information that you need now that you understand that there are other species there in order to make your assessment?
Well, I don't know. I guess we'll have to go back and look and see what studies we've done. We had Norbert Quenzer when we did the bulkhead. He studied the short-nosed sturgeon and other endangered fish, and found that they did not have a habitat there. They need like I guess some kind of a sandy shore or something that they find across the river. So that study was we do have a study that was turned in, I don't know, 3 years ago.
And that is part of the record, Pat. Yes.
So I think the onus is going to be on the applicant here to go look at the list and to provide the board with whatever information it has on why it believes this project will not have an impact on those species. Or if so, what kind of impact it is and what mitigation you're proposing.
That's fine. I'll work with Ryan and we'll get together a list and we'll give it to our environmental expert and have him have a look at it.
great. Thank you, Pat.
And I believe the information from some of the correspondence from DEC does have some specific data asks in regard to the peregrine falcon nests. So, those we'll be looking for specific answers on as well. And if you don't already have that, we can make sure that gets to you.
Yeah, I believe Pat and John, I believe you got that today. So we obviously don't expect a response today, but next meeting we can discuss. And if you haven't, we'll resend.
Well, can I just ask, so as we dive into this, Steve, where did you get those species from? I don't think we have any information that those species are on the site, and it sounded like you were saying that they were. Our project is not in the water. Can you just tell us what we're supposed to focus on here? Because a lot of those are aquatic animals. Others are wetland species, and we don't have any wetlands. Heron don't walk around on land. They may be on the shore's edge where they're eating a clam or a fish, but certainly not on the edge of the dock. Can you just tell us where you got those species from? Because I think we answered what we knew in the part 1. And we didn't say that there were, because the questions in 6 relate to habitat on the site.
7, right? Yeah.
7 relate to habitat on the site.
So the 3 studies that I mentioned that we use here was the Seeker review for St. Lawrence Cement from 2001, Appendix J in the LWRP.
But I don't know anything about that project. Were they going to disturb the water?
Well, let me share those documents with you. What I'm looking at is inclusive of what my understanding is of dock operations, which includes, the ingress and egress of trucks going in and out of the dock site.
And barges going in and out of the dock site.
Correct.
Yes. There are barges. It does.
In the water.
Okay, so Steve will send you that stuff, John, and right?
Yeah, that's probably, you should have everything that we look at. It's certainly public record. So, Steve, if you want to let's do 2 things, Steve. You can send all that to me, and I will do 2 things. I will send it on to John and Pat, and I will also post it on the city website so that everybody can see exactly what we're seeing. No secret.
Steve.
And John, it may be that those species have been identified as being in the area, but you can go out and look at your site and say, well, sure, they may be nearby, but my particular site does not have habitat for for example, the heron. So it's just a matter of you addressing some of these for the record.
Don't tell them what to say.
I'm not telling them what to say. That's how seeker works. We give them the
I
information
know,
they need
but
to address it.
yeah, I think they know that they need to address it, but we don't need to tell them how to address it. Anyway, let's move on, Betsy.
I used his example for the heron.
So, so moving on from 7, we owe you a lot of information, and we'll expect to hear back from you on that. So moving on to question 8, John Cody, this is agricultural resources. You actually have 8 and 9, ag resources and aesthetic resources.
Right. For number 8, no. There's no agricultural resources anywhere around there.
Excellent. Let's moving on right to 9. John, you're very efficient.
I know. They don't call me Fast John for nothing. No, they don't call me Fast John for anything, actually. I love using
I didn't
that
know
line.
I called you Fast John. That's good for me to know.
And for number 9, yes. And for number 9, we already have the lighthouse listed as an aesthetic resource. 3 areas that need to be added are Brando's Point, Cohotate Preserve, both on the other side of the river in Athens. And I actually have a picture of from the Athens waterfront park where you can see the loader. So kind of from the Athens waterfront park. It was taken in the summer, and you know, it was yellow and very invisible. So, and let me see what else I have here. So A was yes. B was no.
So when you're,
what do you mean by yes and no?
Do you mean moderate to large or no?
I'm sorry, moderate to large is yes. And
so
then
A
no,
was moderate to large, B was
right,
no to small.
no.
Okay.
C, and C is yes, and that's adding the 3 areas across the river that I mentioned.
For both seasonally and year round?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because the parks come right out to the water's edge. Where was I?
D.
D is no. No impact. And wait a minute now, hold on a second. I got to get a better light.
How did we?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. D1 is no. D2 is yes. It's yeah, they're recreational and tourism related. E. I'd say moderate, maybe. It depends, you know, that's one of those subjective things. You know, if it's a day where there's a lot of dust and you know, it's filling the air, visually it could be a problem. Most of the time it would probably be probably very small impact.
May I ask, does aesthetic resource include the Riverfront Park and Rick's Point?
I would say it probably does.
And the river?
And the river, yeah. Yeah. And the lighthouse.
In C, the publicly accessible vantage points.
I also have sorry, John, do you, maybe I should wait, but I had another comment or
go ahead.
Question. So I've been curious for several weeks now in my own reading of the code, and I know that that's separate from our seeker review now, but I thought I might bring it up now.
Okay.
in section F of 317, the standards for conditional uses, paragraph 1, and I don't know why we haven't ever talked about this, but paragraph 1, usually we focus on paragraph 2, which is specifically about the dock operations. But paragraph 1 says, for all conditional uses where the subject property abuts the water, the planning board shall consider the quality and extent of views from the adjacent public streets to the property to the water, as well as the design and relationship of development to the waterfront as viewed from the water. So we're explicitly charged of assessing what the operations of this project look like from the water, right?
From the river, yeah.
From the river.
Right.
And we certainly talked about screening and so forth in other contexts. I'm just wondering, maybe those of you who've been on the board longer can let me know if this has become a topic of conversation previously, or if it's something that we've ever asked the applicant to address, because it seems to me that we're explicitly told that we have to consider the waterfront as viewed from the water.
Right. Right.
So
from the river, yeah.
I don't remember this ever being brought up, Larry. So it's
I don't think it's been brought up either. I know back when the oil refinery was proposed back in the 80s, it wasn't part of it then. And that's kind of with a few reviews during the period since then, I really have kind of lost my knowledge of that. So. But it wasn't then. But I would think that it would be now, because it is a recreational use, and it is clearly visible from the river, which it should be. It's visible from the waterfront park.
Do we consider that this site has looked the same for over 100 years? I mean, I have a picture from 1932, and it was a bloody mess of buildings on there, including this really big one.
No, we know, Pat, but we're reviewing.
Yeah, we're reviewing it for now. Then they didn't worry about that stuff. That was probably a lot more industrially oriented at that point in time, and it was. But
So
things have
John,
changed.
I think we're on E. I think that's
Okay.
where we stopped, which is may cause diminishment of the public enjoyment and appreciation of the designated aesthetic resource.
Right. And I'd say that it could be moderate. Again, going back to days when there's a lot of dust on windy days and things like that, and noise. So I'd say that's moderate. And then and there aren't any similar projects within anywhere, any of the mileage delineations here. So F would be no.
And then did you note anything else for G? Were there any other things that should be included just for the record?
No, there wasn't anything that came to mind, actually. Open to suggestions if anybody has any.
Well, I would cite that the section in our code, right? Section 317, paragraph F1 says that we need to consider views from the water.
From the water, right? Yeah. Thank you.
So something along the lines of the proposed action may result in essentially obstruction, elimination, or significant screening from the river.
Well,
or
I
something
don't
along
know that I
those
would
lines.
be so declarative as that, because
I think it would affect the aesthetic enjoyment from the river.
Or that it may be in conflict with that particular section of our code.
or that we need to assess this item relative to the requirements of the code.
Good idea.
Right, so that we don't.
This question is about aesthetics. So the code is important, but I think you want to just couch this in terms of the view from the river.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, great, thanks. Ready to move on?
Actually, can I?
And are we classifying that as no to small or moderate to large?
Smaller, moderate to large, or moderate to large.
Okay.
Could I just ask quickly, Ryan, is it possible to zoom in? I just wanted to make sure I saw what each answer was here. Yeah, thank you. Okay. And can you zoom up or just scroll up a little bit? Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm not going to torch you all too much longer. I was hoping that we would get through 10 here tonight. So it's 9:05. Laura, are you up for number 10?
Yeah, I'm fine if the board's
Great.
fine.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, so again, like I did the last time, I'd just like to first look at the applicant's part 1, because I think to answer these questions, answer question number 10, I just need some to clarify some things in part 1. Part 1 E3E, that's page 13. So E says what it says. Does the project, site contain, et cetera, and then it says if yes, because they did mark yes. Nature of historic archaeological resource, et cetera, and they marked historic building or district. And then the name they put was Hudson and Boston Railroad Shop, which I think is the Hudson train station.
I believe, and I'll pull it up right now, but I believe the Hudson and Boston Railroad Shop is the name listed through the Cultural Resource Information System for the Dunn Warehouse.
I think that's right.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
All right, so that will change my list. Okay, good. I do have the Dunn Warehouse, but okay. So if that's the Dunn Warehouse, it's described as an old brick building near the city park. I have to say that building is of historic significance. So I think that what needs to be added to this list with the Hudson and Boston Railroad Shop is the Basilica, which has, sorry, I have to go to a different piece of paper.
I think that's the Railway Steel Spring Foundry and Steel House.
That is correct.
That's right, actually.
We identified that a few months back when we classified the action initially.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, we have the Hudson and Boston Railroad Shop, AKA the Dunn Warehouse, and then we're calling the Basilica the Railway Steel Spring Foundry and Sand House?
And Steel House.
Okay, good, thank you. And I believe that their historic designation is pending, just so you know. Okay, we've got the Dunn building, which is eligible. Coloruso's own storage building, which I believe was called the New York and New England Cement and Lime Company Lower Mill Cement Storage Building. And also their water tower, all of those are eligible.
Where did you find the determinations that they were eligible?
So they,
go ahead.
I just want to confirm that I have Chris open. I believe the letter from SHPO for this, they did an eligibility review on the storage building on site. But I do have Chris open right now, and all three are listed as eligible.
Okay, good, great.
What do you have open? What's it called, Ryan? I'm just curious.
CRIS, Chris.
Oh, that's the database for historic properties?
Yes, Cultural Resource Information System.
Oh, great, thanks.
How about the
Sorry for the abbreviation.
It's a
in
train
the state
And then,
historic.
and then because I had thought that the train station was there already, then Teresa's right. The train station needs to be added to this list, which I see now is not on it, which is already a historic site. This is not part of my question, but I want to note that when whoever's doing E3H, this is in part 1, E3H, whoever this applies to, the WIC should be added to that list. Right now it has the Lighthouse and Olana, but the WIC has historic designation. It should be added to that list. So with that in mind, with those corrections in mind, you know, I did read several times here the letter from SHPO, and I wonder if the information that SHPO had received prior to their response, I think it did not include all this other information. So I just want to note that. So with that in mind, sorry, now now going to our part 2, number 10, impact on historic and archaeological resources, I say yes. Letter A, I say moderate to large. Letter B, I think, Ryan, we did look up to see if there was anything from SHPO on this in terms of archaeology.
We did. We did, and it is not within an archaeologically sensitive area. And further, the letter from SHPO.
I'm sorry, let me speak, please. It is not as far as according to SHPO, with the knowledge that they have thus far.
But I looked it up in the St. Lawrence draft EIS. This is an archaeologically sensitive area.
Yeah, and that's not the only place. In the information that John Cody had sent, which has to do with a survey that was done when the Octane Petroleum Corporation was trying to build a petroleum refinery thing there. There's some information here that indicates that it also has that you know, an archaeological significance, even though, again, I know that it's not considered this from SHPO. So then we go to question C, and it says the proposed action may occur wholly or partially within or substantially contiguous to an archaeological site not included in the New York SHPO inventory. So I'm suggesting that between the St. Lawrence Cement report and this report, that at this point we leave this unanswered because I don't know. I don't have enough information, and I think that I would, if I was going to take a guess at an answer, I would say moderate to large, but I just simply don't know.
I think we might need a little bit of research too. The first question in B asks for an area designated as sensitive for archaeological sites. So that's saying that, you know, SHPO is aware that there's the possibility of finding significant archaeological resources. The second question is worded differently. And so I think we should go back and take a look at the information that you were just referencing to determine whether any of them were in fact archaeological sites or whether they just had the potential for archaeology. or archaeological resources. I don't know if there's a difference there. And so, Laura, those resources that you were
You
citing
send them to everybody.
Yes.
And also, Betsy, I wasn't able to open that document. I think I need,
No one was, Laura.
I
I'll have to
couldn't
figure
either,
out a new
yeah.
way in, because it's not my Dropbox, so
oh, okay, so we'll ask.
I'll
for
get it
that.
sent to me another way, and
So I
I'll.
can't, that's why I don't really have an answer, because I haven't read that document yet. And if there is somebody that would like to work with me on this, it can, it's Victoria or Ryan, but also a board member, because, this is, the thing is that this historical thing, I mean, this report is speaking about, prehistoric and historical cultural resources.
Laura, I'll help you because I have,
Oh, Betsy.
I have contacts at SHPO.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then moving on.
Before we move on, could I just clarify one thing for you, Laura? When you send a letter to SHPO and they look these things up on the CRIS system, they have all the latest information on any kind of archaeological findings that have been listed. So if they come back and say that they didn't find anything, then there isn't anything listed, because they have the latest and greatest. All you have to do is put an X on a map and say, this is where I'm thinking about doing something. What do
I'm
you
sorry,
have?
Pat, I went on their site and looked for things, and
Right.
that simply is not true. I had to do some real research to find some. I'm not talking about the archaeological now. I'm talking about the historical places. And you guys put in your part one, I assume that SHPO's reading your part one. You put precious little in there in terms of historical places, and I'm not even talking about the archaeological stuff. So if SHPO has all the historic sites in this area, then I'm not looking at their site right, because I could not find some of the stuff that I knew were historic sites. See, just when you submit this request to SHPO for this letter, what are you sending them as documentation to back up your?
You send them a copy of your site plan, and you describe to them what you're doing. You have to send them some pictures. You go on their website and you have to enter all this information, and they have a lot of information.
The information from part one.
No, they have their own forms that you have to fill out. You have to explain what you're doing and exactly where it is. You have to highlight the area that your site is, and then their researchers take that and check out the neighborhood for you.
Well,
that's how you do it on every project.
I'd like to dig into this a little bit more, because something seems amiss to me. It just seems amiss in terms of maybe all the information that they have in their list, lists. I don't know, but certainly on your part one, guys, things were missed. So going forward, okay, so let's just leave B and C kind of, empty for a minute, unanswered. So then going on to E.
D, do you want to do D?
D, I don't have anything in D, because that's other impacts.
Okay.
So I didn't fill anything in there, because I just don't know what to do yet with B or C. So going on to E, E1, the first one is no, it will not, or small to no impact. And anybody can jump in and disagree with me, by the way, guys. The next one, proposed action may result in alteration of the property's setting or integrity. Again, I wrote no, little to small impact. The next one, number 3, the proposed action may result in the introduction of visual elements which are out of character with the site or property, or may alter its setting. Again, now I wrote moderate to large. We've got stockpiles that are 15 to 20 feet high. The noise, idling sounds from trucks, the traffic congestion. I felt that was moderate to large, and that's that. That's the end of my question.
So, I know, Betsy, that we want to move forward, but
I think we're going to stop with 10, Larry.
Okay, I just had one comment, if I could. I'm sorry.
Sure.
So if we're considering the train station to be substantially contiguous, which it sounds like we just did decide that, then I would say that on question number 9, we might want to change D1.
About people traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good idea.
I mean, that's routine travel.
And it is, and people do come here for the aesthetics. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that we want to change that thing to a
moderate to large. Thank you, Larry. I was thinking exactly the same thing.
And I hadn't, so we're a team, I guess, right?
We're all in this together. All right, so board, let's call this session to a close, knowing that we will continue it in January. And again, Colarusso friends, please, thank you so much for bearing with such long meetings.
Betsy, if I may interrupt, we had a number of questions on or clarification requests for questions 1 through 5 that I believe have been clarified. I have those highlighted in here. We can either look at those quickly now, or we could look at those at the next meeting. I'll leave that up to you.
Just Ryan, unless one's needed for the next, that there are several questions that are sort of outstanding. Laura's just identified a few. And I think I'd like to go through and make sure that we have all the information we need, and then we can go back and address all those parts of questions at once.
And I have those all highlighted in the document. So I will share the updated copy with you all, and those will remain highlighted.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Pat and John, we will share all this research that we're digging up with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, and
Thank you.
Thanks.
Merry Christmas.
At this
thank you. You too. Happy holidays.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah and all of that stuff. Kwanzaa, you're doing that.
Yeah. So Victoria, at this point, we say goodbye to you as well. Maybe she's gone. No, there you go.
Good night.
Thank you. And
Good night, everybody.
You, Victoria.
Take care, Ryan.
Happy holidays.
The rest
Happy
of you
holidays.
stay. Hold on. The rest of you stay.
Yeah.
We're not done yet with you. So we have our other business. And I wanted you all to know that HDC did receive our letter about the CAS site. That has been posted on the city website. Carol put it up on Gossips of Rivertown as well. And Bob Rasner has set up a meeting with me for Friday. So I will report back to you on what he has to say to me. I've also received a phone call, which I've not had the opportunity to return, from Steve Dunn, who is acting as their pro bono attorney. And he did want me to know in his phone message, and relate to you all as well, that he completely endorses everything in our letter. So I will report back to you before, I'll sort of do a little write-up for everybody about my conversation with Mr. Rasner on Friday.
Thank you, Betsy.
And my IDA report is basically the same answer as number 8. There was no meeting this month.
Yeah. And well, since we're doing committee reports a little bit out of order, the one bit of really good news that HCDPA got is that the city did get its $1 million grant for an anti-displacement study. But this is to remain Donna, Streitz, and Carol are on. I'm going to beg of you two, this is not public knowledge yet. So if you were, I'm so sorry.